Good afternoon and welcome. This is the Marion City Council work session, Tuesday, September 18, 2018. I would like to note that during a part of the agenda, Council Member Etzel will participate in the meeting by telephone during our special agenda section, which we will move to at this time. So we have a special agenda section where we're taking some votes, which is not typically what we do at these work sessions, but we are going to be voting on a few items here today. So do we need roll call?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do roll call.
Mr. Draper?
Here.
Ms. Etzel?
Present.
Mr. Jensen?
Present.
Mayor Abu Asli?
Here.
Ms. Gedalia? Here. Mr. Brandt?
Here.
Mr. Sternad?
Here.
Thank you. Okay. Can we move to the special agenda section now? Okay. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I move ordinance number 18-24 approving a rezoning from rural restricted A1 to medium density single family residential R2 and general commercial C3 and rural restricted A1 to office transitional O1 for property between Alburnett Road and Irish Drive north of Tower Terrace Road. Gil Green, second consideration.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 18-24, approving rezoning from rural restricted A1 to medium density single family residential R2 and general commercial C3 and rural restricted A1 to office transitional O1 for the property between Alburnett Road and Irish Drive north of Tower Terrace Road. This is the second consideration. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. The motion is approved. For the next several items, I will turn over the gavel to Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, Will.
I make a motion to receive and file letter of request for regional YMCA functions and fitness center local option sales tax allocation YMCA 207 7th Ave Southeast Cedar Rapids removed from September 6, 2018 agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Will and a second by Steve. Any discussion?
Yes, I guess I need some clarification on this and the dollar amount. If we could make that noted, please.
Clarification on what? I'm sorry.
I would just like to understand. I'm understanding this is coming from the local option sales tax platform. And what is that dollar amount?
Do you want to know the amount we've accumulated so far or the amount that we'd be contributing?
Yeah, the contribution, please.
I believe they had requested the $1 million. We've allocated $2 million out of the local option sales tax, and I think we've accumulated about $670,000 to date. So to do that, we would be advancing on a couple of years' worth of collections, but we carry a balance in the local option sales tax account that would allow us to do that.
Okay, very good. So thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, Lon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
Item number 3, Andy.
This will be for resolution number 27143, approving the payment to the YMCA regarding the regional YMCA functions and fitness center in the amount of $1 million, which was removed from the September 6, 2018 agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Randy and a second by Will. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any abstentions?
Abstain.
What about no's?
And any noes? Okay. Item number 4.
I'd like to make a motion directing staff to negotiate a loan agreement with the YMCA, and this was also removed from the September 6th, 2018 agenda.
Loan guarantee.
Oh, yeah, loan guarantees, excuse me.
Second.
Okay, Paul, Paul got the second. Okay, so we have a motion by Steve, a second by Paul. Any questions on this item?
Yes. Can you explain exactly what this is?
The concept is similar to what we did with Prospect Meadows to be able to provide a backstop for the YMCA for the later period of the loan that they'd be using on the facility. The specific terms on it will still be working out, and I would assume that there'll be a backup agreement, much like we did with Prospect Meadows, for the city to be made whole out of future proceeds once the private debt would be retired. But this is just directing us to start working on it. The agreement still has to come back to the council then for approval.
So at this time, we have no idea as far as the amount that the city would be guaranteeing.
We'll be bringing back some more specifics. I think Zach had outlined some of the items in his initial proposal.
Anything else? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Relinquish the gavel back to the mayor.
Okay, and I would note that Councilwoman Etzel is now leaving the meeting.
Bye, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
Good night. Bye, everybody.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to Administrative Services section of the agenda, or under consent agenda, Administrative Services. We have a discussion regarding Ward 1 vacancy. Is that right? Or is there something before that?
I wanted to pull two
Okay.
for discussion as well. Sorry, I should
Okay.
have mentioned that.
Let's do that first then. Who can talk to us about number 2?
I can start since I wanted to pull this separately. I just wanted to understand a little better how this will work if we can't get it done in an hour, because the previous CIP meetings, previous one was 4 hours. It took a lot of deliberating and for a few of us who are new up here learning. And so at this point, my thought about this next CIP meeting was going to have to do with more prioritization, dollars to things, tax levy discussions, et cetera, and I was concerned about getting that done in an hour. I don't know, Steve, if you had anything to add to that.
Oh, exactly the same comments. Yeah, Renee and I were discussing this while we were at the library Saturday morning, and so we both had kind of the same concern that an hour, we don't want to shortchange ourselves, but going to a much shorter meeting, it seems like this is one of the most important topics we have all year, so we certainly do not want to shortchange ourselves.
Yep, to clarify, it's
And
not an
concern, too.
hour. We're just moving it up so that we can have a longer discussion if necessary and not drag the meeting out too late. When we initially scheduled the meeting on the 17th at 4 hours, we did not expect it to go the full 4. We won't be doing project prioritization during that day, just straight prioritization. It will just be related to funding. So right now we took the feedback that we received from you at the last meeting and are putting funding models together. So we will be going through funding and then any other kind of discussions related to additional increases or bonding discussions for the future years. So those will be discussed. We just wanted to move the meeting up to 3 to allow for more time that evening. So it would just go until we were done
Until we're
discussing
finished.
it.
But isn't there a work session that day?
Yes, we just wanted to start the work session earlier to accommodate for a longer discussion with the CIP.
Oh, so we're turning this CIP into our work session. This is no
We're
longer
combining
a
it.
separate special meeting. And will there be other things on that agenda?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Very good, okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Okay.
a long day. Okay,
We're just adding an hour.
okay.
Well, we're only adding an hour on the front
On the
end.
front end, we don't know how long.
We don't know how much on the back end.
Gotcha.
All right, I want to make sure, so we're going to say we'll take whatever time is needed on the front end of that meeting. All right.
Someone bring sandwiches.
Yeah, I was just about to say. Snacks.
Yeah,
Pack
pizza.
my bag.
Back to your bag.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
All right, are we good on that?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Ward 1 vacancy?
There is a memo put in your council packet regarding the options that you would have. Council needs to decide whether to fill the position or fill the vacancy by appointment or special election. If appointment is chosen, it must be filled within 60 days, so that would be by November 29th. If special election is chosen, it needs to be filled no later than 90 days. Due to a blackout period around other elections and holidays, the only dates for a special election would be December 11th or December 18th. And then the county said an estimated cost for the special election would be between $25,000 and $35,000. And then citizens still have the ability to file a petition if they want to hold a special election if you choose the appointment route. So it's legal's opinion to fill it by appointment.
Okay.
If by appointment option is chosen and there are no applications, what happens?
That I don't know. I can contact the county and get that answer.
Okay, thank you.
So I can look into that as well. I don't think that was something we really actually contemplated, that nobody would apply, but we'll be prepared for that contingency.
But it would be by an application process? There'll be a time for applications to be accepted, and then...
Correct. We would publish a notice in the paper. They would submit an application, basically a cover letter.
Mm-hmm.
We would invite them to a council meeting where they would speak, and then you would vote on who to appoint.
Which is typical what has been done in the
I believe
past.
Randy was at one point filled by appointment. So
was I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I like the appointment option, at least for the standpoint of saving money.
Will this be on the Thursday agenda to vote as to whether
to choose by appointment or special election?
this will be on Thursday's agenda?
Right.
Okay.
Right now, we have it as an appointment,
Okay.
but if you'd like me to add the special election option.
Okay, so based on discussion tonight, you'll
Yeah.
determine how to put it on the agenda?
Correct.
Okay, so what's the discussion? Steve, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so again, I'd probably prefer to go the appointment route. Again, it's been successful numerous times by the city in the past, and again, from the standpoint of saving $25,000 to $35,000, I think that's another key consideration.
I agree. We consider, you were appointed, he was appointed, you both ran and won right afterwards, so I would agree, save the money.
I would also, I guess, comment as well too, anybody who is going to potentially go through the troubles of running on a ballot, that they would step forward by application. So no sense in using tax dollars to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Having seen the process and gone through it as well, I think it's served us well. It's free. It allows people who want to come and hear what the prospective candidates have to say. It's basically an interview at a council meeting, which I think is a pretty neat opportunity. It's unique. And it's only, I think it'll be less than a year by the time we get this going around. So 25 to 35,000 seems like a lot. It'd be different if the term were longer that we needed to fill, but I think we're under a quarter of it, or at a quarter, so this makes sense.
Paul, do you have any comments?
The cost is a big item to me.
Yeah.
And I think if we have some people interested, that we should definitely interview and listen, right? You know, it's 15 months.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time, if we had to have a special election, it would be 11 months. So it makes sense to me if we could have someone come forth that would like to serve the city of Marion for the next 14 months.
Okay. That enough of a indication? All right. Thank you. Any other items that aren't starred on the administrative services section of the consent agenda for public service? There's 2 items there. Nothing? Okay. On to the police and fire section. Chief?
Early on in my tenure with the Marion Police Department, I was approached by a United States Marshal for the region that serves Iowa My past experience at the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, one of the most aggressive federal partners you can have in fighting violent crime and apprehending violent offenders is the United States Marshal Service. Their ask was for us to dedicate somebody full-time toward their violent offender task force. I was very gracious in telling them that I would love to someday. I do not simply have the staff right now to commit, but we did want to enter into a partnership with them immediately. However, it's only going to be a few hours a week for one of my detectives to become part of the task force if we get somebody that's wanted, that's affecting the Marion and Cedar Rapids area, that we have the personnel that's been deputized at the federal level. We can access the resources of the United States Marshal Services to work with them and go after these individuals with the power of the United States government behind us. Looking forward 3 to 5 years, a partnership with them could grow to a full-time position like we have with the DEA. That would garner us equipment, a vehicle, a lot of overtime that the officers could use that would be provided by the United States Marshal Service to us by being a part of that task force. And it would take our capacity to keep Marion safe and then to draw those extra resources in with a force multiplier of their personnel plus the region's personnel. If we get something kick off here where we need some help, they'll come running to help us. So this is just an initial step to get us involved in the task force, just a few hours a week.
So right now, those resources are not available to us? We're not able to tap into those resources?
No.
You have to have an agreement of cooperation?
Well, if something kicked off, they would bring it, if we needed to do a surveillance or something long-term or something, we had an offender that we needed to go after, we could certainly ask them, but it's not going to be as easily accessible if we were to have a person on the task force.
Mm-hmm.
They bring the full power. It's part of investing in their team where you get the return on investment.
Okay.
So I'd love to say yes, but really the answer is no. But does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a bit surprising, but I guess it's important that you have that
Sure.
tie and resource.
Chief, without naming names, do you have a candidate that would fit this role?
Yeah, we do. It's I believe it's Gilson, isn't it? Right. Yeah, it's a Detective Jeff Gilson in our investigations bureau. Like I said, it's just a few hours a week, but it gets us acclimated to the task force, gets the officer access to training that we would not be able to provide to him free of charge through the Marshal Service. And we can really assess, what's the value, what's the return on investment here in Iowa versus my previous experience. To me, it's a no-brainer. If we want to stop tomorrow, we can stop tomorrow if it's not of value. So,
Good step.
Will he continue on? So if 4 or 5 years down the road we do full-time partnership, or would it still be him, or is that?
He just got up there, so I could see him being up there at a minimum of 5 years. Yeah, so it's a distinct possibility. But if he were to get promoted to sergeant or something like that, then I would probably have to move on to the next candidate. But we would have an inside glip to the operation and at least build the partnership a little bit.
Oh, a sergeant up is not someone.
Right, it would be a detective.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
Oh, can I ask one more question from you two? This is more just out of curiosity. Sorry, head cold, I'm fighting. So 3 new police cars, and then we also just did the new student resource officer vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference? Do you equip those differently?
No, honestly, we try to equip them the same.
Okay.
The only thing that's different this time is because we had some budget constraints, we had to get an Edge. So we had to actually get a different vehicle to make sure that we could get the cost in.
Sure.
One thing we are doing is they're equipped exactly the same, except they'll be white. The SRO vehicles are white, and we're looking to outfit them with cameras. So we're still working on that, video cameras, because that is just something we're working on getting in place.
Okay.
They still have the body cameras, they just don't have a camera in the car.
Gotcha. Thanks. Just curious.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nothing is marked for discussion under the parks or, under the parks, there's only one item. If nobody has a question on that, we'll move on to the engineering section. Mike?
Were there any questions on any of the payments while they're switching the monitors? Item 2 is accepting Downing Farms third edition of the City of Marion. So this is west of Albernet Road, north of East Robbins Road. It's the area outlined in red. It's behind the new retirement center. So this is just the extension of Elshire Court.
Who owns directly to the north of the retirement center?
The retirement center.
They own that.
Yep.
That plat. Okay.
Yep. It's for a potential addition.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Any questions on that one? Next item, Eric Brown actually came in and addressed City Council on these same items, so we're just going to receive and file. We were able to give him answers at that council meeting, but because the paperwork didn't get into a council meeting until he came, so we're just catching up on it. So we're just receiving and filing it. There's no action being asked. We're just following the proper procedure. So engineering and or public service will put it in their work programs when we can.
Okay. So we're just as a formality receiving and filing this, but it's already
Correct.
been addressed.
Yep.
Okay. Questions? Number 4.
Number 4, we went out and got quotes for the 520 12th Street. These were put in a way that if someone wanted to move the building and bid $5, they could have. We didn't get any that proposed to do that, but we did get 3 bids. Rachi Construction was the low bid at $16,800. When they're done with it, it'll look similar to what the daycare looked like, where it's flat site with taking out the basements and everything.
Okay. So I guess my question on this is, it's not yet determined what's going to happen with the rest of that block. There's no, right? I mean, I know there's proposals, there's ideas, and there's no concrete project for the rest of that block.
Later on when we get to the actual regular agenda, there's some mass diagrams I'm going to hand out to you guys to kind of talk about some of that stuff.
Okay.
So if you would like to wait, what we can do is we can put this on the regular agenda for Thursday and vote on it. You're not acting on it tonight anyways, but I can take it off the consent agenda and move it to the regular agenda.
Yeah.
And that way you have time to see these diagrams as well.
Okay. Okay.
Just so you're aware, the building, in order to get it secure, you'll notice some wood pallets and stuff have been screwed to the building to secure it because we had people just squatting in it, so we had to secure it.
Yeah.
As a liability. So I'll just move that to the regular agenda for Thursday.
That would be 5 and 6.
It'll be 4 and 5.
I mean 4 and 5.
Yep.
Sorry.
Probably 6 and 7 too.
That's over here, though.
So the next one is 6 and 7, and that's the one that's right out here by our parking lot. It has the staff parking lot on the north side of it and the regular parking lot to the south of it. Again, we got 3 quotes on that one. The low bid came from Tabi Excavation, who won the last series of demo quotes that we had for $12,800, and received 2 other bids on that one. This is one where in the future we would likely expand our parking lot, but this is the one that City Hall's built around.
And why the difference in cost there?
I assume it's because this one is a brick building,
No,
and
I
so you
mean-
have to dispose of the bricks.
Why was Rachi 10,000 or double the amount of the other 2?
That's just,
What, are they seeing something that the other 2 aren't?
when I have 2 that are that close, I mean, Tabi's done a good job on the other one, so I'm not concerned about that. It might have been where Rachi wasn't too serious about it and just threw a number out there. Because if you notice their other one, they're a lot cheaper, so they might have, or maybe they had a use for the bricks. I don't know.
Has asbestos study testing been done in either of those buildings?
On both of them, yeah. I don't remember which ones had asbestos, but as part of the the program, we showed them where the water service was, where the sanitary sewer service was, if there was asbestos, and that might be part of it too. Maybe they don't want to
They're
deal with
aware of the
asbestos.
Okay.
Yep, we
So
already
that's
did
in the
that.
contract, okay.
Yep.
I guess I have the same question on this as on the other one. If there's no immediate project, you're not immediately going
No,
to
but we
be-
are paying utilities, you know, it's a liability to have it just sitting there.
There's nobody living in it?
There's nobody living in it, so it's just falling apart. So as something that's becoming a nuisance property, I don't see a reason to keep this one.
You run that risk of squatters in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that will give police and fire the opportunity to
Always.
go in? Cool.
Okay. That was 6
I don't
and
think
7.
Deb can burn it because it's a little close to City Hall.
Any questions on that? Okay.
But even the daycare, if you guys didn't know, they cut holes in the roof, practice on that, got the new aerial out. So, I mean, they always utilize it. The heat team was in 520 already, so they've already started using the buildings, and we always make sure they know.
Now, the police and fire, I've seen the police and fire having a lot of extra practice where you haven't had that. That's not always available to you, so you're taking advantage of it. So, glad to see that.
Randy said you could use his house too if you guys.
We just finished with yours, Bill.
Good.
Sorry about that.
I'll make that claim now.
All right, and then item 8, we got a request for stop signs at Williams Drive and Shady Oak Drive. So this is a rural subdivision that we annexed in. It's just south of Lau Park. You can see the subdivision is this street. If they haven't paved it, they're soon to pave it, and so they're worried about that extra traffic that's going to be going on that intersection. That is an uncontrolled intersection. And so we'll look into it and see if it needs stop signs and report back to you guys for a recommendation.
I think it might be a good spot for a stop sign with that road going through. Just, I don't know if anyone else drives out there much, but I have in the past at that intersection for work, and yeah, it's just people just take that curve.
Yeah, and there are some taller bushes that the Parks Department will look at to see if those need to be trimmed back.
Well, and once people discover that's open, it'll be another access to the park, another access to the school. I anticipate that is going to get a lot more traffic than it currently does.
Okay.
Slow down traffic. Three-way stop sign.
Nothing under the community development section of the
I know, I would use it.
consent agenda.
Parks would probably use it.
Mayor, I would just point out that number 4 is the motion to receive and file HPC's recommendation on 525 11th, the Urban Vintage Building. But I think we were going to have more of a general conversation. You saw the memo later in the agenda.
Right.
So.
Okay. All right. City managers section.
Yeah, the City of Marion has an opportunity to apply for some funding through a program to help with the cost of extending sanitary sewer out to the new Marion Aircom Park. You may remember this coming through to the council before. It's a development on the other side of the airport, so east of the airport, south of Airport Road. It encompasses around 90 acres. And in order to serve the area with sanitary sewer, we need to extend it along the old railroad right-of-way and then come up north to, at a minimum, our property line so that they can tap into it. And that'll open up the bulk of this area up here to be connected to our sanitary sewer. We did have a plan at one point to run sanitary sewer across from Enterprise or Partners Avenue through the airport property over to this area, but when they started getting into it and looking at the engineering of it, the depth of that sewer would have been unable to serve a lot of this property. So by coming up from the south, we can actually serve quite a bit more property than we would have. Per the terms of our own subdivision ordinance, we're actually required to extend utilities to the edge of our property for the adjoining neighbors. The advantage that we have here is that because we're extending it into the REC service territory, there's a grant program that's available through SIPCO where they can receive a grant, they loan it to us for up to 10 years, and then as we pay that back, it goes to Lynn County REC and goes into a business revolving loan fund. So we can select the terms that we want to pay it back. We can start right away, 10 years, 0%. We can defer it for 2 years and then start paying it back on an 8-year amortization, but all the proceeds of that come back to Lynn REC, and then they can use it for business development out here at the Aircom Park. It's commonly used around Iowa in areas where you're eligible for it. This is really just the first area in Marion where we're getting into a full-scale business development where we can access that tool.
Do we know what the dollar amount is for that?
It's estimated at $392,000.
I just want to know that turned the gavel over to Mayor Pro Tem for this.
Yeah, and between the grant to SIPCO and what they have to put in for match, we can access about $360,000 through them. So the city will have to put the other $32,000 in, and we'd be anticipating doing that out of the sanitary sewer utility.
Would the proceeds be then available? Would the grant have to be satisfied and the term terminated before proceeds could be reloaned back out then through the REC program, or would those become available as we process the payback?
It becomes available as they accumulate funds into the revolving loan fund.
I'm sorry, what percentage did you say? Did you say 100% of it goes into the revolving loan fund?
The $360,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just a color map of the area.
That sewer line has enough capacity for that whole area?
At a certain point, you do kind of get out of the watershed, and so we have to be careful about how much we serve. But eventually, if you go much farther to the east, I think it's Seacrest Road, then you start getting into a whole new watershed, and then you got to bring up a whole new trunk from the wastewater treatment plant. So we can only go east so far until more comes up.
Yeah, that wouldn't preclude property owners further to the east from doing something like a private lift station, but we'll continue to monitor the capacity on this line, especially with industrial development. Those lines get put out there based on assumptions of what's going to connect, and if you have wet versus dry businesses, it can affect your actual flow. So it's just something we have to keep an eye on.
Does all of the MEC connect into that also, or is there a separate line? Because you said originally bring it up from, I don't know, what'd you say, Enterprise or?
Partners Avenue?
Partners, thank you.
Yeah, so there's an internal sewer system that feeds MEC, but there's also one, so the red area that you see there is Bjornson. And so there's a line that goes along the old railroad as well down there. And that's where we need to extend it. It only goes part way to the east. And so we need to extend it farther to the east in order to.
But all of the MEC comes down to that line.
Some of it does go north to a separate line that goes down to 62nd.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, so we're going to move through the consent agenda with the mayor's abstention. There's one item in administrative services but not highlighted, so same thing with engineering. Did anyone have any questions on those before we move to regular agenda? Okay, back to regular agenda and relinquish the gavel back to the mayor.
Okay, administrative services. Who's that?
Police, did you want to, or Joe? This is for the hearing on SIBO.
This is a public hearing in regards to a liquor violation for sale to minors from Chibo Fusion. It's their second violation in the last year, and so therefore they're going to assess a civil penalty and a 30-day suspension of liquor license. This is just their request to be heard by council. The police department doesn't designate the penalties. That's not up to us. That's designated by statute. And we will have a sergeant here that can testify to council on what occurred with the violations, the convictions, and then it'll be up to the council to make the final decision. So I believe the council received the packet of the information previously. So it's just she didn't add right on the date of birth. It's as simple as that. I don't think there's anything malicious coming from that entity whatsoever. Eat lunch there 3 times a month. It's just the wait staff just didn't pay attention. So,
Do they get to keep their liquor license up until the hearing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, this hearing precludes any action until the hearing's heard before it would be put into place. If there's another violation, it's pretty serious. So.
Chief, not to put you on the spot, do you recall when the first violation occurred? I'm just
so
curious.
The first one was on December 19th, 2017, and then the second violation was on June 19th, 2018, and they're both very similar. The first one just didn't check the ID. The second one actually received the ID and then didn't add right.
And then when do they fall off? 5 years? Is that when they kind of get expunged from?
I don't want to give you an answer off the cuff on that. I just know it's within a 1-year period, so
Okay.
But I'll double check and get that answer for you. Anything further?
Okay. Engineering is next.
All right, so on Thursday, we'll have a public hearing regarding the Echo Ridge Estates access fee. Basically, there's an existing farmstead where we widen the road in front of them as part of the subdivision, and then we're putting an access fee on them for, in the future, should they redevelop or replat, they would have to pay that access fee for the road improvements that we did. This is the Boyle property. It's going to be $31,749.21.
Okay.
Am I blanking? Where is that? Why am I blanking?
Echo Hill Road, west of Albernet.
Okay. Thank you. It's that cool. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on that? Number 2.
Okay, the next one, that's both 1 and 2. 3 and 4, we'll have a public hearing regarding access fees for 35th Avenue. Similar instance where the subdivision to the south improved 35th Avenue, so it was the full width. And so this is an access fee so that if the farm field to the north ever develops, they would have to pay for their half of the street. It's $185,346.84. These are all established by ordinance, so there'll be 3 readings.
And they'll be made aware of them.
They have been made aware of them.
Questions? Okay.
This is going to be the second reading on Thursday for the Tower Terrace Phase 2 access fees. So basically what happened was for Mooney's portion, the total length that was used when the access fee was calculated was only the orange area on the south, and the blue area to the north was forgotten about. The yellow area is Slagle, and that's not being proposed to be changed. It's only Mooney's. So what we did is we just took the total dollar amount that he still owed us by the total lineal foot that he hasn't developed yet, and that's how we're establishing the access fee. So he's not paying anything more, it's just he's paying it at the right amount moving forward. And we did have a meeting with Mooney, and this is how we'd like to proceed. So this is the second of 3 readings on this.
Okay, any questions on that?
The next one, back for the 7th and 7th roundabout, we had to buy an access from Chuck Kent. As part of that access through the MOU, we said that we would come back after the project and put this little L-shaped 20-foot wide access in that goes from the alley into his driveway. And so the first part of this is a public hearing regarding the bids that we received. And then we'll go into item 7, which is actually the 4 bids that we received. Eastern Iowa was the low bid at $29,073.90. It's a little higher than the engineer's estimate of $27,000. Has a completion date of April 31st of 2019 with $300 per day in liquidated damages. And again, this was per the MOU dated 2/5/15.
So once completed, that will become a public street, correct? I'm a little gray as to the,
Yeah, so there's
above that at completion.
There's also a portion of the property that we're going to deed over to him, and so during that, we'll have to figure that out. I'm going to assume that when we speak with him and once we get it all done, that he will kind of take care of it as part of his parking lot, because it doesn't really serve a city purpose, so it'll be similar to an alley.
So we won't be doing any snow removal or repairs or maintenance to that road going forward, correct?
I don't think so.
I mean, it just goes from the alley to his parking lot.
Right. Yeah, I would assume that he would take maintenance of it since it's his
In the
patrons there.
green space to the left of the road and to the right?
So there's, I believe, 20 foot that we're deeding over to him, so most of that green to the left of it would become his anyways to mow. The area to the right of it, it depends on the Parks Department. If he's not mowing it, we're already mowing some areas down there. For example, the area on the northeast quadrant of the roundabout, the bank is actually mowing that as part of their property. To the southeast quadrant, a lot of that is city property, and we have a parking lot there. So our Parks Department is actually out there mowing it. We mow the center of the roundabout, stuff like that. So our Parks Department's already out there. So if they have to mow that.
If in the future there is a sale to that property that he occupies now, are we clear as to the lay of the land there for resale in the future?
When we clean up the areas as far as setting property pins, I mean, he will have 20 foot of this property and we will own the rest. I mean, there'll be pins that will be set.
Okay.
We need to go out there, and there's a lot of cleanup where basically we own the property, but we haven't dedicated what's right away versus what's city property. So we need to do some cleanup in that area.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, from that description, Mike, according to that, then in the future, if Chuck sells that, the majority of that new road would be city property, or is city property, so somebody in the future may elect not to take care of that.
They could. To resell that, I would think it would become a redevelopment project, and like we would probably vacate alleys, and it would be a larger redevelopment.
Yeah,
But we'll figure that out when that time comes.
that would make sense, yeah. Chuck ought to just do that now.
He wants this driveway.
Yeah, okay, if he wants it, he can,
Yep.
he can have it, okay.
So I did tell him that the public hearing is going to occur, but he's not planning on coming. So
Well, this should make his customers happy. They don't have to drive the roads.
all right, our next topic is 525 11th Street. We're not asking you guys to make any decisions tonight. We just want to get some more information in front of you. In your packet, you did get a draft report from Martin Gardner. They're still not done with it yet today, but it goes through some of the background of what needs to happen, and so they're still going through and figuring out what is that going to cost to do all those things that they discussed in that report. And so rather than give you a wild guess, we wanted them to take the time that they needed to get actual numbers. So I may not have it for you Thursday either, but we just wanted to get the information in front of you that we did have at least, and we're still moving forward with it to try and figure out answers to your questions. So, were there any specific questions about the report? Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll kind of lead into a bigger discussion about the whole block.
Questions about the report?
No, I thought it was a very detailed report, so, I mean, that gave me a good understanding of what the issues were with the house. I went through the house yesterday, so that gives me a little better feel for understanding the report better and having a better feel for what the property is actually like.
And if there's anybody else that wants to go through the house, let us know and we can get you through the house. One thing that you guys haven't seen yet is they've done some more research, and basically there was more additions than we thought there were. So this is how the house is sitting up as north. So Section A was originally built in 1868, and that's the original brick building that was there. And then the blue Section B was an add-on that happened sometime between 1869 and 1883. And then soon after that was Section C, which is the green, and that was a wood addition that was brought on. But again, they don't know what year. It was sometime between that same time frame. Basically, they had an insurance report that they found, and it had that total square footage on it, so they know that by 83 it had all come in there. Section D then was added on about 1913. And so Section C and Section D are both wood. And then Section E is the garage, the attached garage that was added on later in 1960.
I thought that when Paul reported on the history of that house, he said it was built in 1848.
That's, according to Oxley's book, that Section A was.
Now, this is part of the report that they're writing, so.
So we have a discrepancy between the shooting.
No doubt. I only believe what I read, but historically, it's still a very important.
Regardless, yeah. Okay.
The police rolls.
All right, so what I'm handing out are two mass diagrams, and I'm going to pull them up on my laptop.
That's a big. Thank you. So again, we're not looking for any decisions today, but we just wanted to go through it to kind of give you guys an idea of what we're talking about. So the first group that we're going to go through is the full block of the parking ramp. This is if we utilize the entire block for parking ramp. So here's City Square Park.
Hey, Mike, what's the difference between the two packets?
That's what I'm going to show you. Let me walk you through it.
Gotcha, okay.
It's basically the parking ramp.
Yep.
So here's our City Square Park. Here is the multi-use building, Walgreens, City Hall, parking ramp, and another multi-use proposal. So this is just looking straight down at it. Then we have some 3D renderings. So again, this is the park, the mixed-use building, the parking ramp, and another multi-use.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
The multi-use that's on the library site, is that taller than the library mixed use by a floor? It's hard to...
Yeah, I don't know if the exact details have been figured out. This is conceptual.
Okay.
So this is just to give you guys an idea. The purpose of this is to kind of show you what the parking ramp looks like compared to the rest of the proposed buildings around there. So nothing is solidified. Again, we're just trying to get something in front of you guys so you can see it, start thinking about the big picture of what you want this area to look like, because putting that full ramp in there can look big. And so we want you to kind of see some visuals.
Mike,
So-
can you, oops, I'm sorry, I
Yep.
apologize. Can you tell us what, in looking at this from the top down, south side of the parking ramp, can you show us what's that sliver? Is that,
This
is
is
that just
the-
an extension of the first level, or are we looking at retail space there, or what are we looking at? It
So-
looks like it empties out onto, I'm guessing that's Fifth Avenue?
So that's the actual ramp that gets you from level to level.
Okay, so that's a
In that
drivable
style, yep.
surface, okay.
And you'll see it in some later pictures, but in the full block scenario, they are showing retail on the north portion of the parking ramp. So here's kind of looking more ground level from the north side of 7th Avenue, looking southeasterly. So again, the parking ramp from that view doesn't look as big when you compare it to the two larger buildings. Here's more of a close-up of the parking ramp. It's currently shown as 2 stories with, again, that retail on the north part of it. It can go up to, is it 5 stories?
I think they were considering 4 or 5.
Yeah. It could be up to 4 or 5 depending on need. Just another close-up of it. Now here's looking at 7th Avenue, looking southwesterly, so you can see City Hall there. That in this case, when the parking ramp is only 2 stories, it only looks as about tall as City Hall. It doesn't look as tall compared to the other buildings that are around there. You got Walgreens, that's the closest building to you. And then you can see the skywalk from the parking ramp to the multi-use building.
I believe, and maybe Lon, you can correct me, the skywalk would actually have to go up 1 floor on this illustration. So the concept is that the skywalk would enter 1 floor above the library, and then you would come down for lobby space. So in this situation, when you build a 2-story parking ramp, you could park on the top floor, be open to the sky, but the other parking would be, you'd go up a stairwell over and then.
So you're saying it would be elevated per?
1 more floor.
1 more, I was gonna say, because aerial
Seems-
does not look like it would clear through that one right now.
I think, yeah.
It's shown that way in the second packet, I think, with the additional floor.
It may be.
Yeah, I think so.
It is.
So again, here's more of a ground level. You're standing in Walgreens parking lot, so you can see the City Hall and the parking ramp and the multi-use building. More of a close-up.
So Mike, the whole concept, if I'm looking at, I don't know, on page 6 or whatever, it's showing the parkade, but it's also showing a lot of parking around it, surface level parking. Am I looking at that?
Yeah, I mean, like you can see from this picture, we're showing parking on the south side of 6th Avenue like it is now.
I mean, on the block itself. I mean, the parkade is not taking up the entire block.
On the second packet.
I'm still on the first packet.
Oh.
Not out of it yet.
Well, the south side is what they call it, I believe it's considered a speed ramp. So you would drive, that's exterior drive that would be elevated into the ramp. There's one in downtown Cedar Rapids. I'm trying to think of what street it would be on, but
4th Avenue.
Yep.
But this picture here is what I'm looking at. Isn't this all parking out here?
This is Walgreens.
Oh, I'm in the wrong picture. Okay. Oh, I got it. My mistake.
So that's the full block, and then as part of these discussions, it was discussed, to make it a half block or to build around the buildings. During those discussions, it didn't make a lot of sense to do the L-shaped. It was either because of your piers and everything, it just made more sense to just do half. So here you can see where 525 is still there. The 520 is still there, and 530, 540 is still there in that picture. And so they're using all the alley and everything to the north in this depiction. So again, nothing else has changed except maybe the skywalk elevation and the parking ramp size.
And there's nothing right now where the current library sits proposed, right? It's all conceptual, we're just guessing.
I think this is, Lon can correct me, but I think this is what they're proposing. I don't know if they've gotten that far along with it.
Yeah, the building that you've seen is the one that was submitted in the response to the RFP that the library board issued for redevelopment. It is a concept building at this point, but the idea would be to have a building with commercial on the main floor and then multiple floors of residential above it. It may not look exactly like the one that's in here, but the concept is sound: 30 to 40,000 square feet of commercial space and then 74 to 75 units of residential above it.
And the parking ramp would then need to accommodate that building as well? There's no built-in parking in that facility?
The parking that they're showing kind of nestled in the corner of the inverted L would be to support the commercial. After Mike gets done walking you through the pictures, we'll talk a little bit more about parking numbers and things.
What's the number of parking spots in each of these? Have you?
That's what we're going to discuss after I get.
We don't have that yet.
Lon's going to go over that.
Lon's going to talk about it.
Oh, thank you. That's right. I was looking ahead.
So again, it's using the same views that we saw before, except this is only the half block instead of the full block. A lot of the views, you can't really tell that it's a half versus a full in the pictures. Especially when you zoom in, you can't really tell that was only a half block instead of a full block from those views. You'll also notice that in the half block, they did not put the retail on the north portion of the parking ramp because we're only building a half of the parking ramp. They need the extra stalls at this point. There would be an option that we could go higher and add retail back in there. But again, you're adding more cost to the project by doing that. So that's why you'll notice that there's not the storefronts that there were in the full block. Again, from this angle, it's hard to tell whether it's a half or a full from that angle. And there, you would not know from Walgreens if it was a full or a half. So some things just to start you thinking. So for 525 and those other buildings to the south, whether we want to move them, whether we want to keep them and rehab them. And so, for example, for 525, do we want to take it back to the original brick only, or do we want to take apart everything that wasn't brick? So taking the wood additions all off. I know the one that was C, the orange one or yellow one, was going to be hard to remove because of the roof lines and stuff. And so just thinking about that. And then if we do rehab them, what do we want to use those for use? Do we get those to someone and it becomes a residential property? Is it something where they can use it as a commercial use? And just try and think about what we would actually use those buildings for, because we need to have a use for them, something back on the tax base instead of them just sitting and falling apart. So we showed you the full versus half block. Lon's going to talk a little bit about the net parking. Obviously, we're taking away some ground surface parking that's there today to put this parking ramp in there, and so that's a big issue. I know that there's a perceived parking issue in the uptown, and we've done it many times where Dave Hockett has taken Walmart and overlaid it in the uptown and shown that you're willing to park at Walmart, walk to the back of the store, but you're not willing to walk around the corner. So with that, I'll hand it over to Lon to talk about the parking.
Yeah, the main thing I wanted the council to see was, with these massing diagrams, really get an idea of what the uptown looks like, both with the half-block parking option and with a full-block parking option. The main difference between the two is what you can ultimately gain out of them for parking and whether or not you actually see a net gain in public parking. With the full-block ramp, it's about 150 to 156 spots per floor, depending on how they choose to stripe them and where the ultimate speed ramp ends up coming in, et cetera. If on the main floor, if you take the retail and put the retail in on the main floor, you lose around 46 to 50 spots. So ultimately, with a full block 4-story ramp, you can end up with about 540 parking spaces. And one of the things I think that it would behoove the council to keep in mind is that with both of these buildings coming forward, you're talking about adding 150 residential units to the uptown. So the residential units alone are going to take 1 floor of the parking ramp. So when you start talking about net gain, you need a floor for the residential units. Then with commercial in both buildings, particularly on the Marion Square Mall block, where you'd have second floor commercial, which would be geared towards office type of users and professional users, you'd need parking for the business purposes as well. So that's going to take another floor. To then turn around and replace the parking that's going to be lost on the current Marion Square Mall site and what gets taken out for the plaza expansion, that's basically your 3rd floor of the full block parking ramp. So you're at 4 floors on the parking ramp in order to see a net gain in parking for the uptown. At 3 floors, you've preserved what you have, but then you have enough to be able to serve the new uses that you're creating in the uptown. With the diagram that you can see, the parking lot inside of that inverted L on the existing library site is around, I think, 60 spaces, which is about what is on the current library parking lot right now. So that one's about a net neutral. So when you collapse and go back to the half-block parking ramp, you have to go taller and eliminate the commercial on the main floor in order to come close to yielding the same number of parking spots. And even with that, you don't have the same potential, because even if you go to 5 floors on it, you simply don't have the footprint that you have with a full block parking ramp. So you do lose some potential for going that route. And the one that, 4-story one shown at a half block would be expected to have somewhere around 300 spots, because you lose a little bit because of the circulation inside compared to the overall size of the full block ramp. The other thing that you give up is you lose that commercial potential. The building that the new library would be in does anticipate having commercial facing 6th Avenue on the street level. You'd end up with a one-sided commercial corridor coming down through there. If you have a commercial on the other side underneath the parking ramp, that's considered to be better practice, because then you've got reasons for people to come all the way down the street and then cross and go over to the other side of the street. One of the concerns with parking ramps is that in a fully urbanized uptown, they don't create a dead zone, because you'll typically have retail or other uses past it, so people will continue to walk past it. In Marion's case, with City Hall being right here, until we see redevelopment further down the street, there's not really much of a reason to walk past City Hall for retail purposes, so it does have some implications for the uses and the value of the retail on the north side that would be underneath the existing library site. The next step really for us is to start firming this stuff up and be able to give the council some estimated costs for one ramp option versus another ramp option. But if you want to yield the same amount of parking spaces, the early feedback we're getting is that the cost is all driven on a per spot basis. So if you're going to want 400 spaces, it's going to cost X dollars, whether it's configured in a full block or a half block ramp. I think one of the keys for it, and Mike touched on it, is that I don't think there's any concerns at the staff level, necessarily about preserving 525, preserving 520, 12. It would just be, what are we going to do with them afterwards? The McGowan House is one that the city already owns. It's a historic property. We've put $50,000+ into that, just updating the HVAC, and if there's one thing I think we've proven, is it's that we're not the best of landlords for commercial properties. So it would be, okay, the council's will is that we want to save those properties, one or the other or both, fine. What's the end game? What are we going to do with them? Are we going to put them out for an RFP? How are we going to approach what's ultimately going to happen with those properties and then move the project forward? I think the developers are pretty open to whether we do the full block or the half block ramp. The key to it is that the residential is not going to be successful without the ramp, especially at the premium rates that they're thinking that they need to in order to be able to make the pro formas work. So the ramp is something that's necessary to support the project, either one or both of the projects.
Will the parking, if we did the full block parking and then we have the commercial on the first level of the ramp, is there parking to accommodate just the general everything else that's going on, or is this just going to take care of all of this that we're proposing?
Again, it depends on how tall
public parking.
On how tall you build the ramp. At 4 floors, there would be a net gain to public parking.
4 floors, would that exceed the height of the library and the other proposed mixed-use project?
No, the height of the floors in a parking ramp is lower than the height of the floors in a regular commercial structure. The one diagram that they were able to provide, 5 floors in a parking ramp comes out to the equivalent of about 4 floors on the regular commercial buildings. And to address your question from earlier, Renee, on 7th Avenue, the library building is 4 stories tall. On 6th Avenue, it's 5 stories tall. So it's about the same height as the 5-story building that would be proposed on the existing library site. So they'd be pretty close to each other.
I would like to add some public parking with this project. I mean, just without knowing numbers and all of that, but to just build it to sustain those 3 buildings seems short-sighted.
And at this point, planning has been working with Stanley Consultants on that update to the master plan for the entire central corridor. Once that is adopted by council, we'll have some idea, and we can start moving forward with what do we think we're going to need for our parking projections across the entire uptown area in the expanded footprint. Right now, we just don't have that number for you. When we were working with the folks from Park CR, they did parking audits at various times during the day to see how many spaces were available on street, et cetera, as part of their model for determining the financial viability of operating the parking ramp. So they feel like they have a decent handle on that. In fairness, that was before some of our uptown businesses have opened up, so that changes things and can literally change it overnight. One of the implications of removing the commercial from the parking ramp is that you're losing $2 to $2.5 million worth of commercial property tax valuation. And once that's gone, with the half-block ramp, you have to build the ramp from the beginning knowing that you're going to build the commercial in there so that it can be accommodated at some point in the future. If they're going to go with the half-block ramp, they're probably not going to bother to do that because they feel like they'd be giving up on the viability of that option.
We heard the same thing at 6th and 12th. Tore a building down there in that level lot. We had people promising to put a parking ramp in there with retail underneath, and it never happened. So, we don't know.
How do we have any idea as far as the developer coming forward? I know these are just conceptual drawings, but I can't imagine not looking at these photographs and wondering where are all of these proposed people going to park? Has there been question about a skywalk that crosses South 11th to this facility? And kind of to piggyback on that as well too, there's in this illustration there's 35 parking spots. It looks like there's close to 100 or not, if more, residential apartments or condos in this conceptual drawing. I just feel like it. I don't know. I guess I'll let you address that, but I'll let you start.
Yeah, there's 74 anticipated residential units above the library, and then 75 in the building that would be proposed on the existing library site. So just a hair under 150 between the two projects. For urban ones, they set them up with a 1-to-1 ratio for each unit, but then you have people that move into the 2-bedroom units, you have more than one person living there, so that they will typically rent additional spaces within the ramp. There are some cross-parking opportunities for businesses that are open during the day versus residences that use them primarily at night. So what we're hearing is that they will, I think the phrase is oversell parking spaces by about 30%, anticipating that there'll be that much crossover overlap during the day. So the ramp would have to be sized in order to be able to accommodate the residential units on both sides and the commercial on both sides. As it's shown right now, the redevelopment anticipates that 11th Avenue between 5th and 6th Avenue is closed. And by doing that, you eliminate the need for that skywalk going across 11th Avenue. Skywalks are between $1 million and $1.4 million. So closing that street down takes a pretty significant cost number out of the project by doing that.
With that anticipation, one of the thoughts I had before I saw these drawings, and it still comes to mind, is if you don't do a full block parkade and you do a smaller one, if you ran, because this half block one is assuming we're going to save all those buildings to the south. And I'm not sure we've talked about saving all of them. I know we're particularly focusing in on one. But if the chance is we focus more solely on the one at 525 11th and you ran the parkade north-south, can't you make it like a 3/4 block parkade, and then you would have some green space on that northwest corner that could be part of that whole area that we're talking about in the Imagine Next?
There'd be a possibility that we could do that. We did have a conversation with the developer about being able to run even just a half-block ramp north-south and give ourselves the opportunity to have another mixed-use structure built on that other quarter block so that we would preserve some retail and residential potential. They haven't really explored that yet because they wanted to know really kind of where they're at the point where they want some direction from the council on where you're going to head so they know which one of these efforts to focus on. They've put a considerable amount of time and pre-development dollars into the two options, and they'll explore a third, but we just need to know where the council wants to head with it.
There are so many moving components to this. You had touched on something that's one of the line items that I had written down here as well too, and that is so much as one's got to happen before two and two before three, and looking at these just reaffirms, looking at these overhead photographs just reaffirms that at this point, I cannot support shutting down South 11th Street. And I guess my justification is when you got a school that is very busy, we see that here at City Hall in the mornings for drop-offs, for afternoons for pickups, the traffic that South 11th takes between those two blocks, and for that to be diverted either left or right, east and west, I just see that as being a major traffic nightmare. I love seeing these drawings, but I'm concerned because if we don't close South 11th, this doesn't work, and if we do this, this doesn't work. And I personally, I think we're going to have to, in my opinion, lean towards that full block. But at the same token, I'm concerned that we're building this ramp, for the residential uptown, period. When we also wanted it for the retail. I get mad when my airlines overbook my seats by 30%. I can't imagine parking spaces. I mean, I can't imagine vehicles being abandoned and left there, to sit. And how are we going to police this ramp? I mean, is it by permit? Is it by hours? Is it we're still offering it for free? I got a lot of open-ended questions, and I know we don't have answers to those, but just wanted to kind of throw out some opinions.
Lon, have you had any feelers or proposals? I don't know, maybe not formal proposals, but any interest shown about anybody that would use the houses?
Nobody that's approached me about it. I guess one thing that I would mention is that
The chamber has not?
no. One thing that I would mention related to that retail on the 6th Avenue side underneath the ramp, that was one of the things that when we talked about it was of keen interest to some of the existing tenants in the strip mall as a possible landing zone for one. I know one of them, the largest square footage user over there, has a keen interest in coming over underneath the ramp. So if we are going to take that option off the table, we need to know that so that we can communicate that to those folks right away, because I think some of them have been looking over here and thinking that that might be a spot they'd be interested in.
I personally, as an individual, I like that retail space. I think it's one way to extend our uptown and get that foot traffic onto the other side of the street. I am all for that retail space on that ground level, without a doubt.
I'd like to know what our city planner thinks.
Well,
you haven't been participating in this conversation, and you're
Well, I've been active in the conversation, and one of the concerns I had a while ago was that we haven't had the opportunity to see a massing diagram, and I think this provides a little bit of a glimpse of what that area looks like as the project develops.
So having seen it, what do you think?
Well, I mean, the massing of the parking structure, it's going to be a big building. I've mentioned that in almost all the meetings we've had. I just saw these a couple weeks ago as well. But one of my questions was, how big is that building going to look? And how big of a structure will it be? The idea that it comes off Fifth Avenue and there's a ramp on the exterior, it kind of reduces the mass of the building, because I just kind of envisioned a building that would property line to property line, all four corners, which I think in Marion, I mean, that's going to be a very large structure. So
And it's pulled off 6th, too.
yeah, it's pulled off 6. What was it, like? Wasn't a whole lot, but like 10, 12 feet, something like that. Mm-hmm. So it does provide a little more of a recess from just being 100% built out.
You're saying this drawing does that?
Yeah, you can see on the south side of where the parking structure is identified.
But that's just on this.
You can see it's set back farther than City Hall is.
Yeah, there's a little setback to provide an opportunity for outdoor seating if you had a cafe or something of that nature, which is very typical when you're building a newer building in an area like this. And to be historically contextual, you want the building right up to the property line like we have on 7th Avenue. When you're building new, it's nice to have a little setback. You've all been to a bigger city where a lot of that outdoor seating is then on the private property and not necessarily on the public property. Mm-hmm. We have very limited space on 6th Avenue between the back of curb and the property line for the outdoor seating. And we're trying to create that on 7th Avenue, and that's going to cost us a lane of traffic. So in the new zoning that's being proposed down through here, you'll see a minimum and a maximum, so that the developer can actually, if they want 6 feet or 8 feet or 12 feet. I think we go out to about 12 feet. So they have the opportunity to do what they'd like in those areas. So,
but the scale of everything is okay with you, and you think that works?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still getting...
Compared to the size of the existing downtown buildings?
Yep.
And everything?
I think the design aesthetic on the exterior is going to be very important. I think the materials that are used are going to have to be reflective of Marion. I don't know that if you had a 80% glass building in Uptown Marion, I don't think that would work. I think Paul's mentioned that. So the design aesthetic is going to have to be something that's looked at very specifically on all the buildings.
There's no question in my mind, once you get the 2 new multi-use buildings completed with the size of those, a full block parkade isn't going to look quite so dominant as you try to picture it today. If you walk over there today and picture it, you're going to go, that son of a gun is going to look gigantic. Mm-hmm. But with the setback, I think we saw also the retail on the north side, on the 6th Avenue side, that will take away from it looking more like a very large parkade.
Yeah.
And as well with the setback, so that you have some additional use. And I think the way it's designed and looks on the outside is going to be critical to fitting in, with the whole uptown area. So I'm assuming that we're not going to do it in the manner that some of the Cedar Rapids parkades are throwing up and just look like a bunch of concrete.
Yeah.
That's going to have a little more aesthetics to it that fits in with the uptown.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like the idea of the 11th Street. I know, Randy, you had indicated a concern with the traffic, and I think that maybe that's something engineering can provide more information on, or we can look at. I don't know what the traffic counts on it. I think a lot of people avoid it now unless they're required to take it. After you sit there trying to take a left turn, it gets a little, that situation does exist. So I don't know if that's something we can explore a little bit more, but I mean,
I just took a quick look at the DOT site, Tom, and same thing. It's the 2013 number, but they're showing 2013 counts on that of less than 1,600 cars on 11th Street. I don't know that. I think 2013 was the year we opened 6th Avenue, so they might be updated since then. And I think if we contact DOT directly, they can give us the count on that specific stretch of street. They just haven't published all the entire map yet.
And before we shut the street down, we're going to do a full traffic study on it too.
Right, and and again too, I would hope people would appreciate my concern, and that is that, 2:30 to 3:30 Monday through Friday. We all know what our uptown streets are like at 4:30 on a Friday, right? 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock or 8:30 in the morning. I mean, we got a lot of kids, a lot of buses. People, kids don't ride buses; they're being dropped off. Of that 1,300 cars on a Monday through Friday through September through April. I would be curious to see that, because I'm just trying to visualize myself coming to a T now at that at that point. I got to make a left or a right. Well, my destination's to the east, so guess where I'm going to go? No matter what given time it is, it's just a concern.
Yeah.
I as well like that setback. I'm of the old school mentality that if I have a retail shop and I want to put a little A-frame sign out that, I'm open for the day, and I sweep my little section of the sidewalk, that setback is very nice.
Yeah.
I personally I hate driving in downtown Chicago for that fact that you literally drive up to the street corner to look around that corner, and, it's all brick and mortar. There are no aesthetics to it. I'm kind of visualizing the parkade that I'm familiar with is down by Department of Human Services in Cedar Rapids. Very nice. It's got those cornerstones on there. They're well lit, decorative, very nice landscaping. They're very attractive, parking ramps down in that area. So I think it's good. One of the things I'm a little concerned about is if we don't do a full, what does that property on the south side look like? How do you integrate now new commercial in the future, or whatever that would be, I mean, is it going to continue to be residential? Will it be commercial? Who's going to want to build something up to the backside of a parking ramp? I mean, those are things, and we're seeing, we got a new 3-story facility up here. I mean, I don't know how the HVAC guys get in between that house and that building to conduct their business. It is right on the line, and those are things that I'm looking at as well too. So,
But to clarify one point, the discussion about 11th Street, whether that's going to be closed, that has not been decided. That's still in the discussion stages. Is that correct?
I believe council gave some indication to.
Yeah, we've talked about it.
I know we've talked about it, but
Correct. I think there was.
I don't believe a decision has been made on that, has it?
No, their final decision wouldn't be until there's a vacation.
I think the council actually passed a resolution endorsing the idea at some point, but I don't think we've gone through the actual mechanisms to. I mean, we certainly haven't done anything to be able to sell property or anything like that.
If you recall, and one of the items that was brought forward when the RFP was discussed was the necessity for parking and the concept of potentially having that skywalk, and the idea was that if they didn't have the skywalk, the desire would be to have an open walkable area so that they wouldn't have to battle traffic, and that was a hindrance to the project. And I think that was when the conversation came out of. So if it was a plaza or was created it would be in lieu of a ramp, and which I think, I think having the skywalk for the library, we can't put the library there, I don't think, without that ADA accessibility and all that stuff. This is going to be a big change for Marion. I think if we started a skywalk system, that might be a little urban for us at this point, but that's just, I guess, more of a perception issue, maybe just from my own personal opinion. And I do like the idea that you would create that 11th Street would extend to the plaza between the library and the park, and then up into the, and it creates a walkable, everybody talks about why Ped Mall. Well, you really have that situation in this orientation. I'd hate to see that closed off too. I think it keeps the original grid of the city visually. It may not be all drivable, but visually it'd keep that original city grid.
We had discussed that too, and then about the idea of needing to make sure on that trip up from South 11th that you kind of preserve that view shed, that as you come up South 11th Street, it kind of opens up and you can see the park and you can see the uptown area, and putting a skywalk in the middle of that would really cut that off. You wouldn't be able to see that as you drive up the street.
No, and I totally agree. I would not be in favor of another skywalk, and I chuckle because we do want the walkability, but we don't want to walk to back of Walmart to go get our gallon of milk. So it's kind of ironic. I just as we take a look at this, and we know that from the south that the accessibility to 7th Avenue is going to start getting less and less and less as we build this out. I mean, for those of us that have grown up in the community, we know our way around. But when Prospect Meadows opens and we're asking for people to come into town, it's going to be challenging to figure out how do you get from here to here, because this road's closed. That's not a road. God forbid we would move into one-way roads around here, because that would be that'd be crazy. But I guess I'm just trying to put myself back into that. Hey, we want the public, right? And if it becomes cumbersome and difficult, I just told you I don't like driving in Chicago. I don't go to Chicago. I don't want that to happen to us.
So what's the goal of this discussion here? And I think
We're just trying to get information in front of you guys so you can start thinking about it. We're not asking for any direction.
We didn't want to throw everything at you and then put you in the position of making a decision with all this on Thursday. There's still some work that we need to do to be able to kind of outline more or less the business case for both sides, give you more concrete details on the true parking numbers so we can get them a little bit closer. And then at this point, I think perhaps we can explore the option, well, depending on what you want to do with the other building over here in the other corner, we could explore that option of going with an L-shaped building and see if that might be something that would be feasible to do as well.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I say when you push this along, Lon, can you send us the numbers? I did not get all of that written down as far as the parking spaces, how that shapes up, what we're losing, what we're gaining. 2 floors, 3 floors. I mean, I kind of didn't have time to write all that down. So as you work on that, if you could summarize that and shoot it out to us, I'd appreciate it.
Paul had a comment.
Yeah, my comment was, and I guess I don't care if the building was built in 1848 or 1868. It's still a historical property. And I'm really pleased to see that we now have something that we can at least pass out to some folks to see if 2 or 3 things, to see if they would like to utilize the building for something, to see if the building could be moved, to see if it can be saved, because prior to the architect's report here, which is pretty favorable in that building, we didn't have anything. So I'm sure glad we went ahead and did what we did on that. And I think that we need to have an opportunity now, we being those of us who might be interested historically in saving that, to meet with the chamber and some other folks and see what their feeling is for the future of the property, if it were to stay there and the ramp were to be built around it, or if it, it's, that's.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry I can't talk better.
That's fine. So one other question I've got is, and I think we talked a little bit about this in the past, about what is a timeline? Is there a timeline in front of us on when we have to make a decision on the parkade and on 525 11th?
this is an area where, I mean, as a municipal project, I mean, the city council dictates what the schedule would be. Obviously, if you talk to the library board and the library folks, the faster the library gets started, the better, because they've got a pressing need for more room and would like to be able to start moving forward with their project. Ultimately, though, I mean, both of these projects, the whole redevelopment of the uptown, comes down to starting this project first, the ramp starting first so that it can be up, and then the second phase would be the redevelopment of the Marion Square Mall site, with the final one being the redevelopment of the existing library site, because you want to build the new building so the library can move first and not have to find temporary facilities or anything like that. So at this point, ideally, you'd be starting foundations in the fall. I think that's pretty aggressive schedule with all the questions that still remain to be answered on it. Our legal folks in Des Moines are going to be coming back to us with an idea. I had outlined for the council, for example, some of the impacts of the lease purchase legislation, what our path forward would be for making sure that we could get these projects done. So there's still some more work to be done. Next stage for us is to quantify it, give you firmer parking numbers, firmer cost numbers, so that you can just make the best decisions.
Does anybody have any more comments? Okay, I just have a general comment. Just about the entire uptown altogether. We all know that development's going to happen, and there's going to be, with our growth, we have to keep moving forward, all of that. And but I also think we have a duty to future generations and to our citizens to maintain what is special about our uptown and our city. People are moving here because they have a special feeling. They feel a certain way about the town, and it's not just about the services, although our services are excellent. It's that community feel and the small town feel that they feel. I think I'm not saying anything either way about what's here in front of us. I just think that in all the decisions, we should be mindful of that we do have, I think, a duty to future generations to be mindful of that. And we should be in the driver's seat. The city should be the one saying, this is what we would like to see here, and this is how it should look. And who can give us that? Because you take away a component here and a component there and a component there and you change it, and I would venture to say most people don't want our downtown to look like downtown Cedar Rapids, with all due respect to our neighbors. So I would just put that out there. We as a city can say, this is what we want, and this is how it should look. And let the builders or developers provide you with proposals that satisfy that. As far as parking ramps go, I mean, the attractiveness of the parking ramp that was proposed over on the other side, on the north half of the block behind 7th Avenue, west of 12th, was that it wasn't on the main street, and it was tucked away, and it was going to have the entire front of it, on the fronting 11th Street, was going to be retail and residential on top. So, and it wasn't on the main street. It didn't invade the feel and the look of our quaint downtown. I don't know if this ramp can be designed that way, so that parking isn't fronting on the street. I guess if it's the full block, it's retail on the first floor, which helps. We've all seen ramps that have been designed, so they don't look like ramps. I think all those considerations have to be taken into effect here, to take it into consideration here. So, thanks.
Thanks for these printouts, Mike. These were a big help.
So I just have one more item, item 10, if you guys are ready, and I don't know if you need to hand off the gavel, Mayor.
I'm sorry. Oh, number 10?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so item 10 is just a resolution approving an addendum to the memorandum of agreement regarding Tower Terrace Road Phase 6. This is for the Morris Wood Enterprises. So this is actually paying the developer to remove half of Indian Creek Road, tying Brookside into the development that they're doing, and then on Lucor adding a pedestrian crossing there. And so the estimated additional cost for the addendum is $154,138, and we are recommending approval of addendum number 1 to the memorandum of agreement. This is concurrent with the preliminary plat, the plan of improvements. So we've all approved.
So because it's an addendum, it wasn't foreseen in the original plan, this came up?
Yeah, it wasn't part of the original developer's agreement, and so we're basically making that modification.
And where's that 150, where's that money coming from if it wasn't in the original project?
So we have an over width, over depth account that it would come out of.
Okay. Anyone else on 10? Okay. Community development.
The first item that's identified there for conversation is the vacation of the alley behind, I wish we'd have put an address on here, basically north of 6th, west of 10th, behind Paul's building. And then you can see that there's also a public hearing for the vacation and for the disposition of city-owned property. I spoke with Paul earlier, and I think he's wanting to see the resolutions removed, and we'll just continue the hearing to the next meeting because I believe he wanted to speak on the issue. And on Thursday, that may be difficult. So there may be some adjustments made between now and Thursday. But number 8, you should have received a memo. So we'll have the final reading of the ordinance related to rules and definitions. I'm sure everybody had the opportunity to get through all those. I think it was some 40 pages or so. You can see that we've made some final tweaks after conversations with folks on the items. So you can see they're put together in a memo. Nicole Burlage in the planning department has been essential to this project. I had to have the council know, and she's done a lot of this work. So if you have any questions on those specific changes, we just removed farm stand from the ag. We included some language that's similar to the state code under family home, and added some small and large group home determinations. And then in mini warehouse, we exclude shipping containers and other temporary individual storage structures, which we're going to talk a little bit about that later. I don't know if the council's noticed or been aware of the number of shipping containers that have been brought into the community and are kind of hanging out on different properties, being rented as storage space. So we're going to talk about that later in the agenda. Were there any questions on those items?
No.
There were no changes to the non-conforming structures as indicated. Number 10, also included in the memo, were a number of highlighted areas, and you can see we've added in family home and added some permitted districts for that. And then we've just made some minor tweaks throughout the use district standards. We removed some of the Y where we had some use district. It was kind of a holdover where we were going to create them, the specific use standards, and we determined that we didn't need to. So some of those have been struck. You can see that we've identified medical cannabidiol dispensaries or sales, and permitted those in the the regional business district. So that would be the basically, and you'll see these when we start doing the rezonings, would be areas where we've got more of a 4-lane divided roadway, Highway 13, 151, Highway 100. The licenses that are being provided at the state level are being provided for regional distribution to ensure that the product can be found regionally. And so it doesn't make any sense for us to have it in community or neighborhood districts when the licenses are being provided to provide access to a large area. So that's why we've limited them to that area. I think that makes sense. Maybe I'm a little more concerned with it, but I also, as the state legislature makes changes, and once there's an establishment in place, if that ever went rec, if it does go rec, I would want to make sure that those were in areas that was a little more controllable. So this keeps them out in the more of the regional business districts, similar to where Walmart is, or larger big box stuff. So I just think that makes more sense. I don't know if there's any questions on that from a council perspective, but that's the logic that we had behind that conversation. And then the manufacturing, we indicated that could go in a manufacturing industrial district. So that's where the location of that would be. I believe Cedar Rapids was granted one of the 2 licenses for manufacture, which is essentially an inside grow facility. So, and then on the final page that or I guess there's 2 more pages, we just had some outdoor entertainment, temporary identified, and just showing where that can be located. And then some minor tweaks to the final page. Are there any questions on those changes as we went through that? I know that was a lot of information. I do appreciate it. We're bringing through the use standards currently, so where you've seen a Y in the use list, there'll be use standards then provided. We brought those through the Planning Commission. You'll see those. Actually, we may have been setting the date for the public hearing. I just don't recall right offhand. But we'll move that forward, and then essentially we'll have the bones of a new zoning ordinance on the books. Now, none of the properties zoned that, and then the idea is after about the first of the year, we'll start going into neighborhoods. We're still trying to determine how that happens, and just take quadrants of the community and rezone those into the new districts, and then ultimately we'll dissolve the old districts. So some communities go forward and rezone the whole town all at one time and adopt about 300 pages of code. And so we're just taking a little different approach, and I'd like to do it so that we're able to work with the neighbors and there's a full understanding when we do this in a public process, because it does affect everyone in the community. So on Thursday, there'll be the final reading of the ordinance rezoning the Gill Green property. Number 12 specifically identifies the preliminary plat. So the council received the preliminary plat. I think we walked through it quite well at the last hearing. If there's any questions on that, there may be some concerns brought forward on stormwater, and I think those have been addressed in that plat at this point. But clearly, a lot of that plat is still developed in concept, and so there'll be additional stormwater information brought forward as those plats are presented. Final plats are presented. The property is going to be transferred by a plat of survey. As you can see, plat of survey 2284 is identified as number 13 and on agenda item 13. So what we like to do is ensure that that plat of survey is consistent with the preliminary, and it is. And so we would see that go through. Ultimately, we'll want a final plat prior to issuance of a building permit. But this just can get this accomplished quicker, provide for the transfer, and then you'll see a final plat come back through as well. We'll get all the fees associated with Irish Drive and Tower Terrace at the time of the final plat. I think Tower Terrace can actually be paid at the time of a building permit. It's just an option. But any questions on how that's going to occur? You'll see a Plata survey come through probably in October. That will be the land that the city's acquiring from the Gill family for the fire station and south of Irish Drive as well. We'll do the same thing. We'll acquire it with the Plata survey, and then when the project comes forward, we'll final plat that project. Number 15 is accessory structures. I believe that the council, in your packet, you received an updated memo related to this. We've put some additions on there. I don't know if Dave's in the audience as well. I think we separated this out a little different. Did the council you guys get a chance to look through the conditions and the options? I think it reads a little more clearly on what's being provided for, but essentially what we've added based on the conversation, and this is something the council can look at, and if you want to add to it or take it away, those are certainly options. But for the size in a residential district, basically limiting the size to 900 square feet. So if you can build it bigger, you're still limited to 900 square feet if you're in a residential district. The height of the building should not exceed the height of the principal building. So if you have a two-story house, you can have a two-story. But if you have a ranch-style home, you can't have a two-story garage. The design, the accessory structure shall be constructed to complement the principal building, including the use of similar materials and color palette of the principal building, and large oversized doors exceeding 8 foot in height should not be permitted in any residential district. So this is going to get into the situation if you have someone that wants to park an RV and they need a 10-foot door, you want to allow that in a residential district. We just put that down because there's conversations about it. There are clearly those in residential areas. I think the one closest to us is on 10th Avenue as you go west towards, actually it's on 8th Avenue, I'm sorry, about probably just west of 9th Street. But you can see there's a large overhead door, and it was used by a contractor in a residential district. So those are some considerations that we've identified to be placed on, that's just residential districts, so R1 through the R6. Exceptions for accessory structures in ag districts. And I think this gets to the issue of, at the meeting last time, it was like, well, what is this going to prevent happening in that neighborhood with the other property from an A1 perspective? And I think the comment was not a whole lot. I do think there was some identification of how far that building is set back and such. They were maybe a little fuzzy on the numbers, but nonetheless, they were correct that there wouldn't be a lot of changes. So what we did was provide for exceptions to accessory structures in the A1 district. If they want to go over the 900 square feet, they'd have to get a conditional use permit. So you got to go to the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Adjustment for a final review of that. And it would have to be on a lot over 10 acres. So when you look at our map and you look for the A1 districts over 10 acres, most of them are on the periphery where there are ag activities. And they'd have to be being used for ag purposes. So this is, when they go to the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Adjustment, they have to present it and, and establish that it's being used for the ag uses on the property. I think that's a critical piece to that. That's really the only reason we're making allowances is for the ag use of the property. That the accessory structure should complement the building similar to in a residential district, and that if it's adjacent to a residential district, it'd have to have a 50-foot setback. So clearly, if you have 10 acres, you're going to be able to set that back from any residential district, a minimum of 50 feet. And then we did identify here the time of construction. Accessory structure or use may not be constructed or established prior to commencement of construction of the principal building. This happens, and I think any city planner can cite when this gets identified as when someone comes in, buys a property, and so I'm just going to build my accessory structure and I'll build the house later. And then later never happens, and it becomes their second location for their boat and their car and their favorite tailgate bus, and it just becomes kind of a yard for everything. So that's a provision that we wanted to include as well. So obviously they're all identified in red, and I think you guys can see those were the items that we placed in there, and would ask for feedback on that from the council. Dave, I don't know. Dave's here. I don't know if he had any.
There's no chance of you repeating that, is there, Tom?
Have you had any feedback between the meetings? Because we had quite a bit of people from the public come, and then we discussed this and we tabled it. Have y'all heard anything in the interim?
Mr. Buckley, who was in the audience today, I think he spoke at the meeting. He stopped in and we just briefly talked about the way it's drafted today, and he didn't comment on it. He wanted a copy after tonight's meeting. If there's no other comments, then I'll get that to him. I'm sure they'll be back Thursday night, though.
And the gentleman with the fire engine, et cetera, we haven't heard from him?
No.
No. Okay.
Okay.
I'm still not in favor of having a limit of the 900 square feet. And then also 8-foot doors on a garage. There's plenty of houses that get built with 9-foot doors. Not in favor of that either. So, and then you took away the whole section about in residential, not A1, but residential, where there could be exceptions. That's not even in here anymore. No exceptions.
And if the council wants that in, that's. I was hearing that more of the concern was about the A1 district.
Well, I think from the standpoint of a lot of the concerns, comments we were talking about is we're trying to prevent with the current because you're not going to be changing the zoning from some of these A1 properties till later.
Yep.
So we have a period of time in which we said we want to try to prevent from having a big red barn on a A1 property that's going to become rezoned.
And I think Dave said that he's already getting people coming in wanting to build ahead of any changes.
Correct.
So, I mean, that's a concern.
So from the standpoint, to ask Will's, so if I have a 2-story house and I build my accessory structure with a height of that, and an 8-foot door is pretty small.
It's gonna look horrible.
Yeah.
Vertical.
Vertical. Yeah, vertical.
Not.
Yeah.
No, and if we want to strike that, that's.
I mean, I know some new developments, some builders are putting in 9-foot doors. I don't see.
Well, I guess, and maybe we'd, other than a standard, if maybe that's incorrect then, but I'm thinking more of like the 10-foot doors with the. But if there's no desire to move in that direction, we can strike.
This only applies to detached structures too. So if the garage is attached to your home, and you want to design a 20-foot door on an attached garage, there's no issues. This only addresses a detached structure.
Sure. I mean, perfect example, I showed a house last night in the Uptown area that had a detached 3-stall garage with 10-foot doors on it, and it didn't look bad. It wasn't any higher than the house because it was a 1.5-story house. I mean, this is going to eliminate a lot of people building an accessory garage that I think it's too limiting. And then I read the last thing, which isn't read, the garage setbacks. It says the front side is 25 feet from the front of the property line or the rear of the property line.
The garage door always has to be 25 feet from the front property line.
Okay,
From the property line from the property line it faces.
sure.
So you might have
So,
a side load garage.
I thought we were talking last time about it had to be 25 feet from the rear.
To create when we had the exceptions in there originally to go bigger on the first draft, if you wanted to go bigger than that 900 square feet, then you needed to
Be 25
put the
feet
put the garage more onto your own
Okay.
building area.
But now it's just the normal 40%
Now it's just
of the backyard.
now it's just 900 square feet.
Just
Place
can't
it
do
where you
any
want
bigger.
it per the zoning, the underlying zoning district. So,
I don't have an issue with the 8 to 10 feet. I think if it's within the confines of the max 900 square feet, it doesn't matter. I do like that we capped that. I like that we have the option that people can come in and get a variance or conditional use.
Can't. Well, I guess
well,
you
they can
could.
get a variance on anything
get a variance,
they
I guess.
like. Yeah.
But
So there's always an option to come back and assess the
There's a hardship
neighborhood,
or-
the character, if there's a hardship, et cetera. But I think I'm happier with this standard. Cancel each other out.
Yeah, I mean I think if it was more known what we're trying to do here, I think you'd probably get more pushback. But I don't think a lot of people know.
Well, everybody that came last time was in favor of
But
this
everybody
because they're
that
living
came-
with.
Well, they're living with one of the maybe 5 parcels in the city where someone could build a red barn. You know what I mean? I mean it's unfortunate that what was built, but now unfortunately the entire city might have to. Everybody in the city might have to pay the consequences if they want to build a larger garage because of what was built. Because there's not many places in the city where you're going to be able to do that.
But you
But-
should have a garage commensurate with your property and in keeping with the neighborhood. So I think it still gives, I think, fair parameters to the homeowner, but you're also protecting the neighborhood.
That's why you should put into place the height, same as what's in your home, the colors. So you couldn't have done a red barn or like you said a purple with pink polka dots, and the same type of material as your home.
Mhm.
That will keep the aesthetics of the neighborhood up. But I think limiting the size and an 8-foot door is the minimum or maximum. I think that's.
I'm getting the
Quite
feeling
too
that
far.
the 8-foot doors weren't something that you guys were, so I've scratched that. The option, and I mean, there's all different ways to go on this. From what I heard, this is what I heard. I know, Will, you didn't support a lot. You liked the larger garage, but I got the feeling that you were the only one that wanted to see it increase. That's the only reason I changed it. But that can be, just like below, it can be a conditional use.
I understand that you
Like
can-
the larger, if you want the 3 doors not facing the street, like colors, setback, that can all be provided as a special exception as well, and then it goes to Planning Commission and Zoning Board for approval. If you want a larger one, then your neighbors are notified. That process can exist for something over the 900, if that's something.
I understand. It's just that in the back of my mind, so someone might request a variance and it's not a hardship. They just want a larger garage for their 3 vehicles. They want to go to 1,000 instead of 800, 900. And they come in and they're not going to get the variance because, well.
That's hard to get a variance for, I'll be honest with you.
I mean, it's what?
That's a hard thing to get a variance for. I mean,
That's
it's
why.
pretty hard to prove a hardship that you need a bigger garage.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, yes, you can, but or anyone will never get approved.
And we've chuckled about it, but imagine the board.
But if the people who are granting the variances are a 9-person planning and zoning commission with the recommendation of staff and the zoning board of adjustment, and they don't think, and they're all made up of Marion residents, and they're looking at the same things, and they don't think it's reflective, probably not reflective. It's not even, it's beyond the 7 of us. There are 2 other boards who are deliberating on those scenarios. So I'm for making it fine. I mean, everything can come up before people, but it should be judged by the community and these boards and commissions, and that's the purpose they serve. So,
Yeah.
2 cents. Anybody else other than me and Will want to? Because we've canceled each other out, so I think Tom and Dave. maybe need a
And the
little
difference between a variance, and I think it's important, the conditional use permit is that it's an allowable use if you meet these parameters, like Will was saying, and then the board can look at it and say, yeah, but maybe you should set it back an additional 5 feet because that guy's house is really close, there's a lot small. They could make those. A variance is when they're providing a variance or an adjustment to the code, and that's a bigger deal and harder to prove. So that's why I say if there's a desire to allow it after a public forum, like you had indicated, Renee, the conditional use permit would be the way to go. So
The variance is usually, there has to be some sort of a hardship, right?
correct, a legal binding hardship that's proven, it's
Where
difficult.
conditional use, the parameters are already
They're
set,
pre-established, and if
meet
they're met, then
it's
it
more
can be provided,
objective.
and the neighborhoods are asked to attend, and you can evaluate it from a neighborhood perspective. Exactly, and I think that's what you were speaking to.
Yeah, it just allows us to be more intentional as we grow, and
Absolutely.
the neighbors to have a character and a feel. I like the idea of neighbors getting noticed and weighing in and giving feedback to the boards and commissions who deliberate on these. Just seems like a fair process as opposed to.
I'd support the conditional use. I mean, this came back actually a little more, because I got the old one out, and I'm looking at them and reading them side by side. I go, we really went
The other way?
Yeah, the other way more than I anticipated we would. I mean, my major concern was how to prevent happening what happened with the Big Red Barn.
Okay.
Right? So we've done that. I think by the definitions, by the definitions you put in here, I think we've made it so that if there was a larger building, if a person had a lot with enough land to put up a larger building, you've now put in the restrictions that make it look better in the neighborhood for size, appearance, and number of doors and all that. So, I didn't think we were going to restrict it totally to 900 square foot, because I think there's going to be certainly situations where people are going to have enough land to be able to put a larger one up without it looking bad in that neighborhood. So I'd be certainly in support of a conditional use option in here to allow that. If that's the direction that can be made from an easier standpoint.
I mean, so there'll be 3 readings of this ordinance.
Yeah.
So would you like me to make those adjustments and get it to you? And then, if you want to, I mean, that's something that can be changed between readings so that you can see it. Does that make sense? Or would you just like to?
I would say to keep it tabled until we can agree on, well, for the most part, agree on an ordinance. That way, if there are people out there that are going to have issues with size restrictions, if that's what's in there, then we have 3 readings for it.
But again,
Changing it through.
yeah, I mean, the people that came that
All in the
essentially
A1.
all spoke in favor of the proposal, the proposed change, were really all speaking
Against the red
against
barn.
that one place. They weren't necessarily addressing the ordinance itself. So I didn't.
Nobody has come out
No, yeah, I understand.
to do that.
Nobody has come,
Good or bad.
other than that group, nobody came against it, which surprised me. But I think we're getting better. I think we're tweaking it. I think we're taking care of an issue. But if you want to table it one more meeting, I'm fine with that. Or
Just have it removed from this one and then bring it back, or how does that work?
Strike it from Thursday.
Right.
I'm with Will on tabling it. I would like us to be more in agreement before we put it out there for the public, so that when they come up, we're not quibbling about what exactly we can agree to then factor in their decision.
Yep.
But did you get enough from us to tinker?
I think so.
more tinkering.
So I'll remove 14 and 15, and we'll just, because it's still on the table, and we don't have to move it back.
The only thing we'd have to check is the specific language for tabling it, because if it was tabled to the next meeting, then we'd have to bring it off and take some kind of action on it. But if it was just tabled and it was an indefinite term, then you actually have to have the motion to bring it off of the table, and that can be done at the council's pleasure.
The final item, and I believe that, I think it's the final item. No, it's not. Item number 16 is related to the Central Corridor Interim Development Ordinance, and this is the elevation of the IDO review related to the commercial multi-tenant building, and I believe the council received the illustrations there. Did they come through in color?
Or do we want to see it?
In color.
Oh, did they come through in color?
I don't think so.
I don't remember. Oh, yeah, I think it was, because it had the red band on the one end.
Correct.
It was in color.
Was it color? Oh, yes.
Oh, yep.
So this is the elevation that'll face 7th Avenue. And this is the west elevation and the south elevation. So this will be towards the trail. And then this is the east elevation. So it's a multi-tenant commercial building. There were some questions when it was initially brought forward, and it had quite a bit more ephes. We brought it forward and had a conversation about the standards, and they've resubmitted, and it does meet the interim development review standards, and so we're happy to bring that forward. The Planning Commission recommended approval of that. So,
You're happy with it?
Yep.
I understand at the P&Z meeting that Mr. Culver announced all the tenants in there.
He did. I don't think he announced all of them, but he did note that yes, the ones in Arby's, where the red band is, and Sanctuary, Spa, I believe was.
Oh, is that the one in Edgewood?
Yes,
Fountains.
absolutely. Yes, you're correct.
Oh.
And did I miss one? And Domino's. Domino's is relocating from 7th Avenue out. So
Just 3?
that's the 3 that were noted. Yep.
How many locations are there in that?
I think they have one space left to fill.
So it's set up for 4 tenants?
Yeah, I think it could be.
And
I'm
one
assuming
drive-through.
Sanctuary probably took
I
more
thought
than
there was,
one.
okay,
Yeah.
One more than
think
one.
they have to.
They're pretty.
all right.
So.
Okay.
And then on the site plan, I didn't bring that over, but I think the council has it. You know, so you'll be able to access the property from both sides of the building. So just to cite an example, Fuzzy's Tacos has that opportunity as well, where you can enter from both sides. And then this fronts 7th Avenue, and then it also will front the trail. And if you'll notice on the site plan, we identified a walk path so that there's access to and from the trail for folks riding their bikes or just want to walk. So,
Would you mind putting that up there? The site. Sorry.
if that falls apart, we'll be here for an extra hour.
No, you will be here for an extra hour.
Tom, what's the time to completion on this?
Todd wants it done tomorrow.
Oh, good. I like that.
So I know the site plan's not extremely exciting here, but so they've got the part a walkway back to the trail, and then that'll access across to the hotel as well.
So vehicle access will be,
On that side?
that's the frontage
Oh,
road?
sorry, both sides.
Oh, both.
So this will have
okay.
right. You'd be able to turn right, left, and then in one way in.
And that's for access to the hotel also?
Yep. So it'll be shared access drive.
And then
Okay,
what's going to be on the, sorry,
Okay.
on the east end?
Arby's.
That's got to be the Arby's because
That's
that's the
the drive-thru.
drive-through.
I'm sorry, I meant for access to 7th.
So you'll have access in this vicinity.
And,
this
okay.
vicinity.
And will that east end access also be for whatever develops to the east?
Correct.
Or will there be any more accesses or just the 2?
Just the 2.
Okay.
Actually, there's one here, one here. There's 3.
Hold on, what now? What was the third one?
1, 2, 3.
Well,
Oh, so there is one over closer to the roundabout. Okay.
This one's going to be tough. I mean, you see the
So close to the roundabout.
yeah,
It is.
to the turn island.
Is that going to be?
There is a turn lane though, so it's what's that?
Is that going to be? You can go left and right, or is that going to be?
Yeah, you'll be able to. think most people will do that once.
Yeah. Then they're gonna use the east one.
And then they'll go through and, I mean, I think internally you're going to be directed. What we've asked is this property develops, and you can see it's highlighted here. It's difficult to see in this illustration, but there's a public access easement that we're trying to maintain in the preliminary plat through the property, so that there's, even from an emergency access perspective, there's an easy way to get through all of the properties if there's a necessity for that in a quick manner. You can imagine if these are all developed individually, the access points. So,
is it going to be access front and back of the buildings all the way through?
I mean, it's not a requirement, but that's certainly something we'd want to evaluate. We don't have any idea how this final piece will develop.
Well, those two so far, I guess it's going to be.
Yeah. Yep.
What about?
I mean, the hotel, you're basically, there's some outdoor areas that would be accessed from the back side of the hotel, but.
I mean, I'm sorry, traffic, vehicles. Will they be able to go all the way?
Oh, to here?
Well, no. The two parcels there that are
between
the hotel,
each other?
yes.
Yes.
On the front and the back.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what about the stuff to the west when 27th leg comes off the roundabout?
Yeah, the idea is that would provide an additional egress from a south leg of the roundabout.
And there'll be access to 27th from behind.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. This was unanimously approved by P&Z?
Yep.
Who's the chair of P&Z right now?
Jody Buddy.
Jody. Okay, do you have one more item?
Do that.
All right. This is a discussion on storage facilities, both structures. I included like open surface storage and temporary storage facilities in Marion. Council, I know Paul's asked about it a few times, and I think the majority of the council asked us to do a little brief discussion. Hard to see on this map, but each yellow dot, I did this in about 5 minutes. Each yellow dot represents a storage facility in Marion. That's 45 dots on there. These are the ones I knew about. This does not include this does not include the apartment people that build a garage and rent it out to people that don't live there, and that's a problem we have as well. So this is about 45 that I knew about in 5 minutes. And they range everything from surface, just car parks, to built facilities, to temporary sheds. I'll go into a little more detail on it here in a minute. There's really 4 different types of storage facilities by the industry. You've got climate-controlled. These are traditional ones, but they're climate-controlled, gated, access controlled. I think you have facilities that we're all familiar with, the traditional drive-up, 10 by 20s, unmonitored, unregulated in terms of access. Another idea where you get traditional, but you also start adding the component of the open storage parking. It's easy to do. Leave those open, and you can build more buildings in the future. And then you just have the open storage lots and the beginnings of a newer trend in Marion using storage containers as storage, so something more like this. We have 2 facilities in Marion right now that are bringing these things in. They are for sale, so you could buy one and use it as your shed on your property. But right now they're being used for storage. You can go and rent one and move your stuff in, or he'll bring it to you. You can fill it up. He'll take it back and put it back on his lot. Everything I showed you is allowed in our commercial districts. So that is anywhere almost on 7th Avenue. Anywhere on red on this map. I know it's hard to see. Anywhere on red, anywhere in the gray, shades of gray, these all allow storage facilities. So if you drive up and down 7th Avenue, I think we've seen plenty of storage garages along here 7th Avenue, right down the kind of the heart of the community. This is where storage garages are allowed and being built, and they've been built pretty consistently since the mid-'80s, I think, here in town. This is not a Marion problem. I got curious. I went down a rabbit hole. There's over 52,000 storage facilities in the United States alone, which is 2.3 billion square feet of self-storage. That's self-storage. It's not warehousing. So that's 82 square miles under roof, or 5 Marions almost under roof. So that just gives you an idea. I mean, that's a lot of roof for self-storage. 1 in 10 right now people rent storage garages, according to the industry. So, I mean, they are something that people are demanding. Obviously, citizens in Marion are demanding these facilities. That's why they're being built. And the industry says they're recession-proof, which I don't like the word recession-proof. I'd say they're recession-resistant. They do about 5.1% return in 2008 during the peak of the recession. So they're a good investment for small people and investors and even the big industry. So I'm not saying they're safe, but they are very consistent. So what's going on in Marion? Obviously, you're putting your best foot forward for design. I mean, they are garage doors. Most of the ones that have been built just metal siding. And of course, that's not meeting the design aesthetics. It's getting pretty hard. You can't build them now. Well, you could still build them today along our corridor, but they'd have to be brick. It's not impossible. It just gets a little more expensive. Again, we've seen them starting to encroach onto the edges of residential areas. I think in my staff report there was a few examples of that. It's a great place for them because that's where the people are at. They're obviously a lot closer to access. And there is it's going through a cycle again. We're seeing an increase in these as well again along 13 and along the corridor and industrial districts. So it really comes down to the council of if I think storage garages are an excellent thing. It's just where we want to place them. I think along our corridor or along our main commercial areas, near residential areas, we got to be really cautious. I've had developers tell me, "Oh, this is just temporary until I have something better coming along." If I'm getting 5.1% on my worst year, I'm going to sit on that garage forever because it's better than a bank. I mean, so I'm going to sit on that for a long, long time.
They never sell them.
Yeah.
You never see them for sale.
No, they don't come up very often. So again, it's just a concern of where we want them, where we want to direct them to. It doesn't fix the problem today, but it does get it off our central corridor and our 13 corridor, and gets them into the industrial districts. And that would be currently everything in gray. And with the current map, which will be changing slowly here in the next year, it does push it out to 13, the 151 area, into the two shades of gray. That looks like a lot of map, but again, we're getting into the land values out here that do not really readily allow storage garages as a primary use. You might get an industrial user out there that has the back acre he wants to do something with. He could put some storage garages behind the property, but to be a self-supported storage facility, unless it's one of those multi-level facilities, I don't think can cash flow the land values out here. And I think a lot of the restrictions, even in like some of these parks, make it pretty difficult as well. Not impossible, just a little more difficult. The only gray areas, again, are along a corridor here. These will likely go commercial with the new map. You're getting into almost fully developed or pretty high-priced land that you might get a multi-story facility, which they don't look too bad going forward. The other bigger trend is, again, those little mini storage pods that are being brought in. I think everybody's familiar with the pod system, but we're seeing a lot more of the storage containers, shipping containers. They can buy them wholesale for $1,500, spray paint them or paint them up nice uniform color, and they sell them for about $2,500, $3,000 depending on the size. But they've been plopping them into commercial areas. Performance Concepts has some. There's a chiropractor that's brought a bunch in. I'm fighting with another individual in North Marion that he has a bunch on a residential property right now. So it's a growing trend. They're cheap, and obviously they don't contribute to the tax base at all. They don't meet any design standards, of course. I'm surprised the storage industry hasn't come to me and says, "Why are you allowing these in town?" Because it's probably about $10,000 a unit for traditional construction versus this guy's into it for $2,000, $2,500. So it's obviously impacting their business as well. So from staff, we would be recommending, as if we go forward, is to eliminate the ability for self-storage in all of our commercial districts, leave them in the industrial districts, and that will give us some time to, again, address it a little bit further, to make sure we generate a code that really does get them off our corridor.
So then everything that exists in the red is just grandfathered in until it
Yep.
flips.
Until hopefully the land value becomes such that it prompts them to want to sell the land.
Is that yellow, is that light gray that's right along 10th Avenue? Is that going to stay?
I think a lot of it will probably go to commercial with the new map. I mean, most of it's industrial today, but I think the land values along there are really, there's not a lot of, the building values aren't a lot, it's the land that's most of the values out there.
Yeah, a lot of that's...
So I would see that eventually turning over.
What is orange?
It shouldn't be orange, it's hard copy, that's multifamily.
Okay.
The mobile home park.
You know, we had, one of the problems is fire unit. You have no idea what's,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
Between the two chiefs.
Chief wants to say something, I can tell over there.
I was actually gonna cut into this. Okay, no, maybe not.
Use the other one.
I'll talk loud.
Not loud.
I was actually gonna cut in and say it is a public safety issue when you have these storage units and you don't know what they're storing in it. And if it's in a commercial area, that's a high traffic public area where you have people walking, you have cars parked. It's public access.
Hey, Chief, maybe try the microphone that's in front of Mike. See if that one's doing the same thing or not.
It's a big concern because of all the public traffic around those areas in a commercial area, and you don't know what's in them. My same concern was about the fireworks. You know, you have explosives. Are there explosives in those containers? We don't know. So having something like that we can't inspect and regulate under the code to make sure that it's safe, we don't have that power. So you don't know what's in there, and it can be a safety hazard.
I'll give you an example. My former life, we insured a lot of these. And we had one recently in Marion who had a new renter coming in on Monday. And the renter came in on Monday and said, I thought you cleaned out the unit. And he said, well, I did. I left unlocked for you. She said, it's full of tires. Somebody had put 500 tires or something in that storage unit to get rid of them, you know. We had one 5 years ago that was full of barrels of toxic waste. Now, what in the world is the fire department going to do if that building, you know, they can't inspect them like they can other commercial property, and that's why I've thought we needed something special for them, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the newer facilities, I use Kelly Green, Bernie Cooper's on the south side, Todd Culver's on 3rd Avenue. I mean, they're gate secured. You have a keypad to get in. I guarantee you all three of those facilities, well, at least I know two of those facilities are probably have a lot of cameras on them. So I don't think you're going to have near the transient living, the tire dumping, the illegal activities going on in there. But the traditional drive-up ones, like I'll pick on the ones on 5th Avenue. I mean, you can pull up there tonight, find one unlocked, dump 500 tires, and be gone.
Cost $5 a piece to get rid of them.
No, I mean, I like your direction.
No decision this week?
No, this is just a discussion, kind of make the council familiar with it. I was shocked by 45 storage garages I knew about.
I'm not.
But it's just a matter of, if you want to get them out of the C3, there's amend the code, which is going to take 3 months, or look at a moratorium to prevent future building, allow staff time to draft an ordinance regulating them. I saw there was an amazing facility looking in Marion. I was really trying to make it happen for them. It was 500 some units, I think, but it was I almost call it a Class A storage facility. I mean, multi-story, and you just couldn't make it happen. And so there's good quality products out there that we'd like to look at, but I can go up and put out I could go and put 70 garages in tomorrow. If I want to face them with a little lick and stick brick, I can sure do that and meet codes. So,
What are you asking from us?
it's either direct staff to amend the code, or look at a moratorium and then allow us time to amend the code after that.
What's your recommendation?
For Tom.
I think that a moratorium on the storage garages in the commercial, in the C3 and below, would be something worthwhile moving forward. I don't know that where I'm at with the temporary storage facilities, simply because, I'm not even familiar with how they're regulated at this point, but that's more of the concern that I have right now is down by on Blair's Ferry Road. I don't know, how many do they have there, Dave?
40.
They have 40 of them.
Shipping containers?
Yeah,
Containers.
stacked up on a property. I don't even know if they're there for sale or they're just leasing those
They're
out.
all technically for sale, but they're all being used for storage.
35th and Indian Creek.
That's the residential
That's
one.
the one that Dave has been addressing. So, but you get into the idea that you have a use, a temporary use. That's, so if you want to rent one, like a pod, you're moving, you have a pod delivered, it sits in put everything in there, they ship it to the next place. So that's a little different than.
These are temporary structures in a permanent. They are basically permanent. Some of them.
Contractor wants to start storing all of his material in the parking lot. He buys a shipping container, places it in the backyard, and.
So you're recommending a moratorium until you guys get something drafted?
On the C3, on storage facility, mini storage.
I'd be in support of that. So.
What about containers, though? What is that?
That'd be all part of the same.
That would be part of the moratorium.
Yeah, that'll. In a code amendment, it's going to take a month or so to research and put together. And obviously, it's about a 3-month process to go through the approval once we actually have something.
We just pull mini storage out of the C3, C2, C1, and
the new code's going to prohibit it, but it's just a matter. It's still, the zoning's going to hang out there until we get the zoning map fixed, and this is part of the process, unfortunately.
Okay. What's everybody's sense on that?
Yep. I'd say, yeah, I think it's a major safety and appearance issue
All right,
on a long-term basis.
We'll go work with legal to get something put on the future agenda here to address that. So,
thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
I think Deputy Chief Slagle's going to come up with a taser and wake everybody up.
Yeah.
No, actually, just kidding. We were actually thinking about ordering pizza and beer. But thank you for allowing us to present Strategic Goal 3 tonight. Tonight we have Lieutenant Chad Knott. And why he's on nights? Why is he presenting the reach out to the community and business portion? Well, he's getting ready to come to days, and he's going to be a prominent figure for about the next 2.5 years for you guys to see, and that's why he was assigned this to work on it. That's what we're here for. The police are the people, and people are the police. That's Sir Robert Peel, day one of law enforcement in Britain. So really just bringing that mindset to Marion is what he's going to talk about. How do we engage this community? How do we engage the business partners that we have so we can continue? Everything we've talked about is growth. We need to make sure that we carry that connection forward. So I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Knott.
Chief. Thank you. Well, this is my first time doing a presentation in front of you all, so be gentle.
We'll be gentle.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure you'll be better than Hartwig, so it's all right.
Well, I don't know. I thought he did pretty well, but anyway, hello. My name is Chad Knott, as Chief just said, and I'm currently the patrol lieutenant for midnight shift at the Marion Police Department. I've been with our police department now for almost 23 years, and this is as exciting as a time that I can recall my tenure here. To witness the growth that is occurring in the city and to be a part of that progress is nothing short of amazing. It's just exciting, flat out. I would like to start, before I go into my PowerPoint, I would like to start off by first thanking the mayor and all of you on City Council for letting our department present the strategic plan to you. as your support towards the endeavor is obviously crucial. I also wanted to thank, I feel like I'm accepting an Academy Award up there, but I want to thank Chief McHale and Deputy Chief Slagle, who's in the back there, for allowing me to partake in the plan, to include this presentation, even though I rank public speaking right up there with root canals. It's just not one of my favorite things. But seriously, those two could have presented this entire plan themselves. We all know that. But instead, they chose to involve other members of the agency to participate, to have some what we call skin in the game, which in the end enables us all, or lets us all be more vested in the success of any plan. So I thought that was pretty amazing. I know I use that word a lot. I'm pretty passionate about this plan. You're probably going to see that as I go in some of the words I write and say, or I wrote and say. But I digress. With all joking aside, I sincerely welcome the opportunity to speak with you all here today about goal number 3. So it all comes down to teamwork, to working together, which makes for a nice segue to what I am going to talk about today, which is goal 3 of the Marion Police Department strategic plan. The Marion Police Department engages in community and business partnerships. This is what you're seeing here is the timeline for the plan review. Chief McHale presented goal 1 about a month ago. Then 2 weeks ago, Sergeant Hartwig presented goal 2. I'm obviously here today with number 3, and then over the next month and a half, you'll see the last half of the plan, the last 3 goals. Goal 4 presented by Administrative Manager Shalene Gray, who's sitting back there as well. Goal 5 will be presented by Lieutenant Scott Elam, and then goal 6 will be presented by Deputy Chief Slagle and Lead Dispatcher Rhonda Kaczynski. And that'll be followed up by a recap of everything that we've talked to you about over these few months, and asking for your motion to support. The 6 strategy goals that have been identified, and I know you've all seen these before and have seen the packet. I'm still going to go through them because I think it's imperative for everybody to be reminded of what these goals are. And I know sometimes as time passes, we do forget them, or people who aren't around them every day forget them. But the one that was presented by Chief McHale, goal 1, was use technology, data analysis, research, and strategies to appropriately staff agency to respond, investigate, and prevent crime. The second goal, which was presented by Sergeant Hartwig, was personnel are highly trained, engaged, and committed to ethical service. Today, again, my goal is MPD engages in community and business partnerships. Goal 4, by Shalene Gray, will be city departments work together to advance public safety and fiscal responsibility. Goal 5 will be to develop collaborative partnerships with area criminal justice agencies. That will be done by Lieutenant Scott Elam, who is the head of investigations right now. And then number 6 will be to establish a Marion Public Safety Communications Center and continue to explore PSAP consolidation options, whether that be with Lynn County Sheriff's Office, Cedar Rapids, or both, or none. We'll see. But again, and that will be done by Deputy Chief Slagle and Lead Dispatcher Rhonda Kaczynski. So we'll go through goal 3 here a little bit, break a little bit of it down. So what is goal 3? Goal 3 is that MPD engages in community and business partnerships. Now, to break those 4 down into specific strategies, they are: 1, to create a work group to triage involvement in community events. Strategy 2 is to identify and reach out to organizations that may assist MPD. Goal 3 is to work with the Parks Department to identify mentor opportunities. And strategy 4 is to use beat structure to react to crime trends. So we're going to start out with strategy 1 of goal 3, which was create a work group to triage involvement in community events. The first talking point here is that requests for MPD involvement in special events has grown significantly in recent years. I don't think people realize how much we're asked to participate in events within the community, which is a great thing. No one disputes that. But it also can become cumbersome. We have to, I go back to the word triage, we have to somewhat identify which ones we need to invest the most in, I guess is the best way to put it. This includes events such as Swamp Fox, Christmas in the Park, Uptown events, Lau Park events, just to name a few, which require planning on our part. It's not just showing up. We do end up creating things that we call incident action plans in order to prepare for worst case scenarios should they occur. So there is a lot more to these than meets the eye. It's not just showing up and being there in uniform. The next bullet point, also we want to align selected personnel to represent MPD at key community events based on their skill set and their qualifications. What we're talking about here is that every officer is different. Their personalities, their beliefs, and their styles. We're all different. I don't care what job you're in. Everyone has those different characteristics. So what officer or officers fit best with what event, it matters. And we need to be selective in this area. And we also, need to know who we want in certain things that can help both the outside community and the agency as well. We also feel it would be important to form a working group to determine process for managing public appearance requests. Currently, we have a patrol sergeant, Matt Jenachek, who simply keeps record of what public appearances we are asked to do and what public appearances we actually are able to fulfill, because we can't do them all. It's just, we just don't have the resources right now. Is this the right way to manage these? Who knows? I mean, which is why we need to have this working group to be able to find an efficient and reliable way of handling and filtering through these requests. You'll see I have up on the PowerPoint that we made 114 public appearances from April to December in 2017, which means who knows what we handled from January until April of that year. Why didn't we track January and April? Well, we just hadn't started. No one really thought to do it. And so that's why those numbers started in April. So we probably, if I had to guess, we, break down the math of 114 divided by 9 or 8, and you've got those other 4 months. I mean, we probably did well over 150 public appearances in 2017. Then we also had so far, and this does not count, I put through August, but August wasn't done when I was putting this all together. But we had 72 documented public appearances through August of 2018. But again, the key word is documented. How do we know that we kept tabs on all the appearances that we had done, and that they were reported to the respective sergeant who tracks them? So, just something that needs to be looked at. Something again that needs to be evaluated and made more efficient. You might be wondering what's a public appearance. It's things, I mean, I look through them all, and it's anything from driver's ed classes to meeting with the Optimist Club to meeting with senior citizen centers, or nursing homes, Collins Road Theater. I mean, there's so many that it's, I mean, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. So, moving on to strategy 2 for goal number 3. It is to identify and reach out to organizations that may assist MPD. The first bullet point here, we want to assign staff to attend and present information at community organizations and business associations to share information and create opportunities for partnerships. This is about reaching out to organizations and associations that many of us being members of the police department, aren't even aware of. We had that discussion one day. There's things that go on around town, and I get it, that groups, organizations, we don't have a clue. We have no idea who or what they're about. Are we going to be able to successfully be a part of every meeting and every group that exists in the city? No, that would not be possible. But it is possible, and in fact practical, to seek out those groups that can assist us in achieving our desired outcomes, which are a safer city for people to live and work and for businesses to prosper. That's our goals. The next one, we want to invite organizations to provide information on their purpose and services at MPD's quarterly basic skills training. This, I'm happy to report, since I am currently responsible for our basic skills, at least I was. Jeff's taken that over now, I'm happy to say, is already occurring, and it needs to continue to do so. For example, just last week we held our summer fall basic skills literally last week on the 11th and the 13th, Tuesday and Thursday. And I lined up a representative from ASAC, Cody Crawford. Cody came out with another gal from their agency, and they gave a presentation on a program called ACES, which is an acronym for Adverse Childhood Experiences. Again, this is just a very recent example, and this type of outreach needs to continue in the future. It is incumbent upon us to extend these opportunities to outside organizations so that we can let them know we are invested and willing to partner in what they are trying to accomplish, just as they are invested in us. It's a two-way street, and we know that. It's very important that we do that. It's not just about the Marion Police Department. This is about everybody. You know, we may get it started, but then we want to bring people in, and we want to hear what they're doing. We want to assist what they're doing, and we want the same in return. That's what we're looking for. And we do this through relationships. We seek to create a working group to explore the possibility of MPD allowing employees to participate with selected community-based services. We want to identify segments of the business community that tend to see higher crime and work with them to lessen incidents. This entails the bars and taverns, retail stores, and housing units that our statistics from previous years show are more apt to attract crime and or have disturbances that are frequently occurring. We have the data. We just have to be able to identify it, identify where we need to go in order to, again, make it a safer community. We want to assess current city boards and commissions for the assignment of police liaisons to key panels. This one's pretty self-explanatory. We're just looking to stay in the loop on things that may affect the police department and the services that we provide. And again, if we were on those boards and commissions, we would also be able to offer, input if asked on what can we do to make our what we have going on better. So hopefully we would be able to provide that. So strategy 3 of goal 3 is to work with the Parks Department to identify mentor opportunities. The first talking point with this strategy is that we want to work with Park and Rec to identify coaching and mentor opportunities. Now, I put an asterisk up here. This is heavily dependent on appropriate staffing. This is slightly redundant with the actual strategy that I just spoke about, but a little further explanation is that we want to explore the possibility of officers actually getting involved with these kids while on the clock, which is why it would be so heavily dependent on appropriate staffing. This may be evening shift personnel, this may be day shift personnel on weekends, but when they are available and they're staffing, could something possibly be done on duty, just something we want to look at for the mentoring. We also want to work with Linn-Mar Community School District and MISD to create an 8th grade curriculum to overview the law enforcement profession. I know 2 weeks ago I was in here when Jeff Hartwig gave his presentation, and we talked about recruitment. The idea of recruitment and the importance of it was touched on that day, and what a better way to do it than recruit early. They're in 8th grade, and I wrote that, and then I said, okay, maybe that's a little too early. I said, but the idea here is to let the kids know what it is we do. Not what is seen on television or in the news, but real life, blue-collar policing. We think it would be a tremendous opportunity for them to see what we do. We do things, we do the ride-alongs. I know Renee rode, I know Steve's going to ride, and I think that's awesome because I think it's great for people to see what we do. And it's the same with the kids. We deal with kids all the time. Every shift deals with the kids. So why not, I don't know what the parameters would be. That's what this would be designed for, is to set up something, spitball ideas, however you want to say it, something to create that connection between officers and students. And it would obviously be something outside of just a DARE program. That's the other thing I wanted to say, that this would involve both school resource officers, Officer Dobbs at Linmar and Officer Davis with Marion, to champion the strategy and educate the schools of its usefulness and its value. And then we need to continue to work with Four Oaks to identify mentoring and educational opportunities. Continue is the key word here. We've had our struggles, but the bottom line is they're in this community. So we have to address it, and we have to put forth our best foot, okay? Because they've had rough times. We all know that. There's only so much you can put up with, but you also have to keep trying. If it fails the first time, that doesn't mean you give up on them. And we have to figure out, we have to put our heads together, get other people involved, whether it's heads at Four Oaks or outside agencies, and we need to start making goals for these youth and see what we can do to get them improved and to be more productive individuals. On the bottom of this one, when I started thinking about mentoring, I wanted to find a quote that applied, and I think I did. The quote is from Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great 19th century philosopher. And on the slide, I believe it describes the strategy I just spoke of. It reads, "Our chief want in life is somebody who will make us what we can." For me, this is where kind of the passionate part comes in. Because for me, that somebody includes members of our police department. And I truly feel we have some incredible people who have not only the ability, but the desire. I mean, a lot of people have ability, but do they want to do it? I think we have both. I think we have people with the ability and the desire to have a positive influence in others' lives. And they want to do that. It's that guardian mentality. You know, there's always discussion, the warrior versus the guardian mentality. Which are we? Well, we're both. We're both. And policing has changed. And we know that. And we have to be adaptive to that and respectful of that. And that's exactly what we're doing. So. The next strategy, strategy 4 for goal 3, is to use beat structures to react to crime trends. We want to utilize beat structure analytics to react to and interrupt crime trends. This entails a larger role from our data analyst, Sunshine McDonald, who to this point has done a phenomenal job for our agency. We got a great hire. I mean, she's already throwing out information. She talks her computer talk, and we kind of sit there dumbfounded, but she's able to bring it down where, hey guys, click here, click here, click here, you'll get to the information you want. So just a shout out to her. I know she's not here, but she's done an amazing job. It also includes identifying hotspots within the city of Marion. Hotspots are areas of the city that may be seeing an increase in crime, which means they become areas that require more focused and immediate attention. We've done that. We have done that for years, but that needs to continue to be done. We need to be using alternative policing methods to combat crime. This may mean surveillance in unmarked vehicles, plainclothes officers, or other outside-the-box forms of policing. We are constantly looking for ways to fight crime or to keep crime to a minimum because crime and its trends are always changing. I know on my shift, like I said earlier, I'm on midnights. I've been there for a year and a half. And if we start to notice an influx in an area or whatever, we'll do whatever it takes. I mean, we have put people in plain clothes. We have put people in unmarked cars, sitting them in there. We have put them in stores. They don't act like a loss prevention person, like a Walmart person does. I mean, that's their job. We're looking for specific things, and we go by trends, we go by data, and that's how we get problems solved. The next bullet point on the PowerPoint is assess call for service workload for current beats. This is also an ongoing process. Beats need to be looked at periodically. It cannot be a one-time thing. I think there was. Did you guys get presented on for beats when we first went to that?
Yes.
Okay, so I may be a little redundant on this, and I apologize, but I still want to explain it again because they need to be looked at periodically because crime changes. Where we build houses, where we build businesses, which we're doing a lot of right now, it's going to change crime trends. It's going to change where the crimes happen. So, in that regard, we have to still be looking at how that is affecting things and they need to be looked at periodically and statistics pulled to make sure that the beat demands for calls is not too big of a load for the beat officer to effectively handle. I will show you the beat map here shortly. It's in my next slide or a couple slides, and I'll explain what I'm talking about in a little greater detail. The last one on here is we want to hold sectors as team meetings to share information and develop strategies to respond and prevent crime. Again, I'm diving into probably a little bit of what you already know, but just to explain it again. Since 2018, or April of 2018, we went to the beat structure. 2 sectors, the 510 sector and the 520 sector. The 510 has the 511 beat, the 512 beat, and the 513 beat. 520 sector has the 524 beat, the 525, and the 526. Therefore, what these sector team meetings will be looking to accomplish is shared information between the 510 cars on all 3 shifts, days, evenings, and mids. Okay? And same goes for the 520 sector, days, evenings, mids. All right? Normally, information right now, the way we do it right now, it's shared through what is called a pass-on, which is simply communicating shift to shift, day to day, what the on-duty supervisor feels is important enough to share. However, vital information can be missed. It's not a perfect system. We know that. Or miscommunicated that may prove instrumental in combating a particular crime issue, thus the necessity of the sector team meetings. I just think they would be huge, very, very helpful, very helpful. So here is the shift beats, and just so you know, I mean, we used to do north and south, north, south, and wild. You had no vested interests, honestly, except in the entire city. I mean, there just was no area of, no focal point that you had, and that is what has changed. You will see the white and then the kind of tan and the brown, that's all the 510 sector. So that's 511, 512, and 513. You have one officer in each beat on each shift in those beats. And then you have one sergeant that is in charge of the sector, which would be those 3 beats. Am I making sense on all that? Okay. Same goes for the bottom half, the green and the blue. I think that's the colors, I don't know. And then the gray, those are all the 520. And then the 520 sergeant is in charge of those individuals that run those shifts. So if we start seeing a problem in 525, and for some reason it's not getting handled by the 525 beat car, it's now up to the 520 sector sergeant to handle the problem. Okay, it's very effective. I'm amazed by it, to be honest. I think it's really neat. But you'll see in these that they're not proportionate. They're not exactly squares, because that's not how the calls came out. This is what we got into with the University of Iowa when they broke down the calls and they decided, this is the way it needs to be run. That brown section up top looks huge, but there wasn't a lot of calls up there. That's just the way it was. Now, if businesses get added here in the next year or 2 years, we need to reevaluate, because it might be too much for the officer to handle, okay? And again, we want the officers to have not so much territory, that they can build these relationships, that they can know these people within the beats. So that's the goal there. So let me see here. What else have we done? Crime-free housing. It focuses on relating to property owners to benefit both them and the community through crime reduction. Right now, that's Officer Fink. He went to a specialized training called CEPTED, which stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. He works with landlords specifically, gives them ideas. How can you clean it up? How can you make it more aesthetically safe? Is it lighting? Is it bushes? There's a lot of things that go into it, but he's currently handling that. We did the 100-day challenge, which got quite a bit of media attention. I'm sure you're all aware of that. We made personal contact with 931 Marion businesses in 95 days this summer. It allowed us to update the CAD with current information and key personnel. You don't know how nice that is for overnight guys at 3 in the morning when we find an unlocked business, and before we had nobody to call. So it's like, what do we do now? We can't secure it. We can't, So now we've got updated information for all these businesses. And these guys going out there, all the feedback I got, businesses love it. Okay? And again, it's about building relationships. They need to know that we care. The last one I put up here is the ALICE training, which again I would assume you're all familiar with. The ALICE is an acronym for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. This is I'm actually an ALICE instructor, so I go up most times with Tom Dobbs, and there's a couple other ALICE instructors. And we educate and we empower Linn-Mar and Marion schools and their employees on how to combat a violent intruder, okay? There's lots of options. They just have to understand them and know them. And that's our job. We need to teach them that. That's on us.
You're doing that tomorrow, aren't you?
I don't think so.
There's something at Linn-Mar tomorrow.
Oh, that's a different deal.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a different. I'll be there too, yeah. Yeah, different deal. But yeah, we're actually doing the ALICE training. We do it yearly now. And there's always new teachers. There's rotation. There's attrition. There's a lot of things where whether they're new or they've had the training, they really get a lot out of it. Again, it's more about the empowerment. We want them to know that they're not helpless, okay? Yeah, they don't have weapons in the classrooms. We don't want them to have weapons in the classrooms because we're coming. But we're going to give you some tools to buy yourself 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and that's what it's all about. So I love it. I love it. So what still needs to be done? The possibilities are endless, all right? By stating that the possibilities are endless, we are saying that the final product here is going to be whatever we choose to make it. Part of our responsibility will be to continually evaluate and attempt to measure where we are at with the strategic plan to ensure that we are accomplishing the goals we set out to achieve. It's not just something we put on paper, okay? It's something we have to follow through on, all right? We know that we're not going to get every single objective met, okay? I don't care whose strategic plan it is. That doesn't happen, but you strive to get as many of them done or met as you can and met well. I typed right here, I said, this will not be easy, but it will be worth it. To summarize, goal number 3, strategies produce ideas that will be evolving and adapting over time. It is these initial strategies, however, that will allow for the construction and development of partnerships with both citizens and businesses. Working together will strengthen the community as a whole by addressing issues that affect us all. That's it.
You did great, right?
Very good.
You guys have any questions for me at all?
Lieutenant Knott, I have a comment, if I may. If you feel like you're receiving an award, then that allows me to feel like Simon Cowell. You did a great job. Presenting is difficult, but as you became more comfortable with it, I can sense your passion as well as all the presenters that come forward. I've seen your strategic plans. I've laid them out in my office. I've taken pictures of them. There's a tremendous amount of input that goes into that from a lot of different levels, whether it's shifts or titles or categories, or everybody had an input, and that makes it awesome. The input as a business owner as well too. When my officer came out to me to gather my information, what an opportunity and an overwhelming point to put a face with a name, to give that information. I can't imagine a business owner not wanting to participate in that program. So again, kudos to you. Great presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more item, which is a closed session. Before we do that, just as a housekeeping item to remind council members, staff, everybody, that when we have discussion when there's a discussion time, it's always very much more helpful, and I think for the purpose of efficiency and keeping the meeting moving in a more effective and efficient way, that all discussions should come through the chair. Whoever is chairing the meeting, that the discussion should come through the chair. We get into this back and forth direct conversation between the council members and staff, and then it's just sort of the meeting sort of falls apart in my opinion. There's a reason why somebody sits in as a chair to direct the conversation, to direct the discussion, so that everybody has a fair chance to speak, everyone can have an equal opportunity, and that it's done in an orderly way. So I would just appreciate that if we could just remember that. And I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I notice sometimes we kind of get away from that, and you should be recognized by the chair, and then you can say whatever you want to say. Okay? Closed session.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to closed session regarding litigation as permitted under Section 21.51C of the Code of Iowa.
I have reviewed the proposed subject matter for the closed session and find the same to be appropriate under Iowa Code Section 21.51C.
Thank you. We still need a second for the motion.
Second.
Okay, so it was seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Gadela. So we have a motion and a second to adjourn to closed session regarding litigation, and our legal counsel has stated that it is an appropriate matter to be going into closed session on. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
Mayor Abawasley?
Yes.
Ms. Gedalia?
Yes.
Mr. Brandt?
Yes.
Mr. Sternad?
Yes.
Mr. Draper?
Okay, we are now adjourned to closed session. We'll return to open session after the matter is completed. Thank you.